Welcome back to the SPL. My name is Finch, and we still have one more set to go. We just saw our final team qualify to the Mid-Season Invitational, so we do know all the teams now, but still they could shuffle around a little bit, so we got a few more games to go. To help me break all that down and talk about this next set, I got Anatoly Alexeyenok right here with me. And Toly, I still expect this to be a good one, despite some slight roster shakeup.
This should be interesting, right? Because Cabom stepping in for Splyce, not in his traditional role of the hunter when he used to play competitively way back in the Season 2 of Summer Days with Cognitive Gaming. Now going to be stepping in the solo lane.
That's right. He is replacing Baskin for this, this week for them. Baskin will still be back at the Mid-Season Invitational to play with this team. He said a couple of times that that's probably the last time he'll play with them. Maybe won't have them in Phase 2. Time will tell based on how they do. But here in the now, Cabom, the coach, is stepping in for this team, and it could not be a more tough matchup. I mean, against Deathwalker, that's not easy.
It's not going to be easy. But what's also not easy for Splyce is who's coaching them. If Cabom is there, it's got to be Munch, right?
Maybe it's Munch, yeah.
Who's watching Munch right now? We have to send out an alert making sure Munch is okay.
Get a Munch cam going or something like that if we can to make sure that he's doing okay. But Splyce still have plenty of talent on this roster, even in a world where they don't have Baskin there for him. And I look, when Baskin's not there, right towards that jungle. How well can Scream do in this matchup? Because, he's been playing with Baskin for a minute now, right? He got used to him in the SML and in these few games in the SPL. Can he still be that setup man for the squad, even without him?
It's going to be more difficult with Cabom in the solo lane because when Baskin's there, they're very comfortable together, being able to play off of one another. In the short time that Cabom's been practicing with Splyce, I don't know how that's going to translate up against PK today. Maybe play a more passive solo laner and then have Scream kind of focus more attention in that dual lane where it's going to be Vote against CycloneSpin. Vote known to play aggressive, known to try to make highlight plays. CycloneSpin could be anticipating that, have some jungle presence there, get CycloneSpin ahead.
And for what it's worth, I don't believe it can change a ton for Splyce anyway, because if they're 4th or 5th place, because Renegades are locked 6th, then they'll just play 4th or 5th no matter what, you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter so much for them. It's the Knights who really want to get this win and see if maybe they could push up a little bit and maybe even cut their way in to try and be a little bit better off in the standing. So, and maybe not going to affect things too much for Splyce, but Knights still want this win.
It's going to be difficult all across the board. Outside of the jungle matchup, the mid matchup, Venenu up against Zyrhoes, what kind of styles are they bringing in? A lot of hunters for Venenu as of recent. Zyrhoes playing more of the Souls, the Morgans, the
back, man.
Jormungandr. So two different styles are going to clash in that mid lane.
This is definitely scary for the Knights, or for Splyce to try and deal with everything that the Knights have to worry about. Even CycloneSpin and the Hunter role and Aror, how are they going to end up matching up in that dual matchup? They don't spend as much time together as they used to, but those players are key for Splyce as well and what it is that they're doing. I think they still have a ton of big names, and as long as Cabom can kind of fill the role for them, they can still win elsewhere. You're losing a lot when you lose Baskin, but he doesn't need to do too much for this team to still have a chance.
You know what I want to see out of Cabom? I want to see him do a Divios in Season 5 and just rotate to that dual lane, get Aror and also CycloneSpin in a very comfortable position, invade those purple buffs, get CycloneSpin ahead of Vote, use that Hunter power that you have to your advantage, because it's not going to be an advantage in the solo lane. A person or any player competitively that's had that experience that Cabom has, with that much downtime, you're not going to be carrying this team out of nowhere. It's going to be CycloneSpin.
And especially not into the matchup with Deathwalker, right? I trust Deathwalker and respect his play enough to think that he should be favored here in this matchup pretty heavily, though Cabom always has room to surprise us. Hopefully he will. We'll get a chance, though, to hear a little bit about what's going on inside the minds of Splyce. Specifically, Support Aror is standing by.
We're here now with Splyce. Aror joining me to welcome in a new addition to the roster, I guess. He's been here a while, Cabom, but today he's going to be playing for you guys.
Yeah, the last time he played was Season 2. It's actually crazy. The last time he played was the Super Regionals in Season 2 when we were on COG together. So the last LAN appearance he had, I was on the team with him.
Did you win that? Did he do well?
We didn't win, but I felt like we did pretty well for the team that we were back then.
Is that your expectation today?
My expectation for today is that whoever starts at 2-0 is going to get reverse swept, probably.
Oh, big talking point there. I'm interested in that one. So is the plan to go down two games early then and then have...
No, we're going to go up 2 games early, and then we're going to get reverse swept.
It's a good way of looking at it. Realistically, though, you guys have already qualified overall. Sure, this is to do with seeding against Knights and a little bit of bragging rights with the fact of the teams. How are you feeling going into this with the fact that you've not got Baskin with you today?
I feel like obviously we're not the same team as we are with Baskin, but We feel pretty good. We haven't got much practice with Cabom, but that's fine because, like you said, we're already clinched, and I feel like this will just be a good step for us, regardless, just to play our game and just play as well as we can without Baskin. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we'll do pretty well.
Final question, is the game plan to have Cabom be the focal point of the game, of like play through him, or are you going to use him as some sort of bait tactic?
We're just going to try to play like a normal game. We didn't go into it like we're going to focus around somebody. So that's basically our plan.
Man, nice guy overall. We'll see how Splyce do. Good luck today. And back to you guys on the desk.
Hennyman trying to bait Aror into saying something about,
Yeah,
come on,
he is.
good job not falling for the trap there, Aror. But I like what he said, that he still thinks this team has a chance to do well here today, because I think that it's right. They are missing a lot, yes, but I mean, this team is still stacked with talent and can definitely still make some noise.
I love how Aror mentioned in the interview of the old times in Season 2. Let's go down memory lane.
Sure.
That team in Season 2 was Meerkat, DJ Pernicus, the
Goodness.
best. Aror was supporting, and Cabom was in that hunter position. In that Super
Was that
Regionals...
Eager? What was that?
No, that was Cognitive Gaming.
It was Cognitive before they were.
Yeah.
I got
And
you,
in
okay.
Season 2 Super Regionals, I think they pulled an upset. They didn't win a set, but they won like one game out of nowhere where they did like a Sylvanas, Anubis, Guan Yu, completely caught the other team slipping with like some sneaky pulls. But they're going to need to use those sneaky tactics against PK today.
Yeah, not going to be quite the same as what happened back there. As this Knights roster is, if I'm saying that Splyce still has some good talent, then Knights is stacked from top to bottom. And like I said, Scream the focal point on Splyce. But for Knights, I'm looking towards adapting. I mean, this guy is always in the conversation for best player, just period, anywhere in the world. He makes game-changing plays all the time, oftentimes ahead of the meta and setting what everyone else does. So much of what the Knights do well starts and ends with adapting.
He's just so comfortable no matter what god he's playing, and very comfortable playing the Arachnes of the world. Likes to play setup from time to time, but will usually focus more on the cleanup crew, because the way he plays jungle is more selfish in a way that he focuses on PvEing first. He
Yes.
wants to be ahead of the gold per minute chart and get 1 or 2 levels ahead of the jungler and make the bigger impact. He likes these high bursting junglers like the Alquonks, like the Mercuries, like the Habois. Hyper late game carry is the focus of Adapting's mindset.
And he plays with this complete trust in his team. He knows he can trust Deathwalker over there in the solo lane, or he can trust Zyrhoes in his matchup too. He doesn't have to be around holding everyone's hands all the time. He can afford to kind of retreat into the jungle and power farm so often because he knows his team can handle it, even if he doesn't have quite as much presence early as the other jungler. And then with that trust, he's able to come in the late game and then make some big impact plays.
And like when Zyrhoes is playing the Souls, the Jormungandrs, he's making those flashy plays. Vote is going to be looking to play aggressive in
Yeah.
the 1v1. Probably going to be seeing some Xingweis out of CycloneSpin. That could be potentially banned from PK, depending if that's where they want to lean. If they want to shut down CycloneSpin, I'm expecting a Xingwei ban. Otherwise, they'll probably play like an Osiris for Deathwalker and just lean on Cabom a little bit today.
Yeah, maybe trying to develop some pressure in that solo lane. I could definitely see that working if you're the Knights. I mean, Deathwalker oftentimes able to develop, pressure up against even other really top-level solo laners. So up against someone who hasn't played at this level in a while, I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to find it there. But speaking of Deathwalker, the solo laner here for the Knights, I understand he's the one that's going to be getting interviewed here. So let's go ahead and get some thoughts from Deathwalker.
We're live here with an interview real quick. 1 second. Zero's left. He was about to get logged out. Sorry. Live with Deathwalker today from Pittsburgh Knights Death. You were talking to me a minute ago about the fact that this is a lose-lose situation for you.
Yeah, it is a lose-lose because I'm playing against a sub, so I can't look good, I can only look bad. If I get soloed, I look horrible, but if I solo him, it's like whatever, it's expected, apparently.
Is it unfair to Cabom to have to deal with this too, then, in the same situation?
No, it's... well, it's fair for him, I think, more than it is for me. I think it, I don't know. For him, it's a win-win, really. For me, it's... no matter what happens, it just doesn't feel good.
Coming into this set, though, I spoke to Aror a moment ago, and I was like, well, this is really seeding for you guys overall, with you and Splyce. How much is that playing into your mind today going into this? Is it a very important set for you, or is this more just getting the win more than anything else and the bragging rights?
Well, I think we still want to win. I don't think we're going to, pull out every strat in the book. We're obviously still going to try. I think we're all kind of sad that Baskin isn't playing, because... we really wanted this set to be kind of a test for us, how good are we really? Since Splyce have been playing so well with Baskin, and with all the roster changes, like I don't know, it's kind of unfortunate, I guess, that he isn't playing this, but I think we're still gonna treat it seriously.
Last real thing to ask you is what you think the scoreline's going to be. Just so you know, Aror has predicted they will go up 2-0 and then get reverse swept. How do you think it's going to go?
I agree with him, actually. I think it's going to be 2-0, and then somehow, I think, maybe Zero's 12th, maybe Vote goes mid, Agni. You never know, but we're going to reverse sweep.
You've heard it here, boys and girls. Strap in. We've got a best of 5 coming your way right now. Back to the desk.
Yeah, sometimes you have to be able to pick throughout all the information we get in those interviews to find the stuff that might actually happen. But very interesting. I love Deathwalker playing along.
And I love how his mentality is thinking of the meta outside the game, saying how it's a lose-lose for him.
Right, yeah.
You got to be in the moment, and I get it. Like, his intelligence is just so high that he's not only thinking about the game, he's thinking about his appearance outside in
Sitting on
the
his
Twitter
brain.
world. Yeah, so I think that in this world, he's going to be fine in the 1v1. He has
Yes.
nothing to really worry about. It's not going to be a repeat of what happened to him when he was against Nika getting soloed twice in one game.
I don't think we'll be seeing that. But I mean, it's super interesting to think about it that way. That you know, he's found this way to put it where to spin it negative for himself. Maybe it helps motivate him and everything too for the rest of the night. But I like what he was saying that they were looking forward to having this chance to play up against Splyce, one of the better teams we have right now, to see where they're standing before the midseason invitational. Now, when they meet Splyce at the LAN, it'll be kind of an unknown element for them. They're not sure how they stack up. They haven't played against that team yet. Maybe it would have been nice to get that kind of warm up moving into it before the actual big event.
It definitely would have been a nice stepping stone, but I think that they're comfortable regardless of just walking into this matchup, getting a relatively comfortable win against a Baskin-less Splyce, and knowing how they're going to be probably focusing on that substitute.
Well, the Knights have done what you must up against Splyce, and they've banned away the Freya from CycloneSpin. Splyce has also banned away the Chronos. So unlike last game, one team will not 2 games in a row be getting both Chronos and Freya, believe it or not.
Not only did they get Chronos and Freya, they got a Fafnir on top
and
of that
Fafnir.
in game 1.
Craziness.
And they also could have gotten it in game number 2 if they wanted to, but instead picking the Naj.
Yeah, they chose not to. Yeah.
Renegades is nuts. I love them.
They had such a, I mean, they clearly were very comfortable in those first 2 games, but, you know, those were games earlier on, focusing here. Splyce had banned away the Mercury away from adapting. Very interesting. They don't want to grab that, but the Knights apparently not worried about this Merlin. They banned a Moose and Cobb in that second slot, and now Venenu has a chance to kind of prove that MVP from Season 4, he can play at that same caliber on the Merlin.
PK, they don't want Merlin for Zero. Zeros wants, like, the Morgan,
Yeah, but you still can
Jormungandr.
ban it, even if you don't want it for Zeros,
No,
right?
because you don't want to deal with a Moose and Cobb. You'd probably rather deal with a Merlin, honestly, than in a Moose and Cobb at this point. Season 6, the pushing power of the Moose and Cobb is great at every stage, whereas Merlin's pushing power is online at level 7 and higher. Jormungandr was a very obvious pick. I'm a little surprised that Jingwei was locked in because it's a little bit more passive for Vote, not typically his style, which leads me to believe the rest of PK's draft is going to be more aggressive on the solo side.
To try and make up for maybe not having that much pressure in duo. But I like this. It lets them hit CycloneSpin twice with the Freya ban, and you pick the Jingwei away early. She's probably the next priority hunter in a world where those 2 mage ADCs aren't available. And so then Splyce can wait till way later on to get whatever CycloneSpin wants, if it's a Hachimon or something else. And then you pair it with the Yorm for all these knockups. But Splyce have the Erlong Shen and the Hercules. That's a ton of early pressure. I imagine the Hercules is for Aror.
It definitely is. It's his staple pick for a number of reasons. Number 1, the counter towards Jormungandr. Not a hard counter, but a way to exploit the weakness of that passive. Yeah, you can't get displaced as Jormungandr, but 10% damage amplification for 2 seconds on that daze is a good way to burst him down by dropping the boulder after the stun. And the second point for Auror's picking of the Hercules is the Zoom Shield of Regrowth. He loves this item. He likes to be fast. Getting more mobility to put yourself in a position to pull people with the Earthbreaker is what allows Splyce to make so many of their tower sieging plays.
He can play a bit squishy early on sometimes on this Hercules. You know, he doesn't always double down right away on all the prods and everything, but it does usually allow him to be more aggressive. So the Knights have to make sure they're absolutely ready for it. And Terra can add to that. The roots, the wall stuns, I mean, the Earth and Fury, those are the tools that can kind of cut out some of this early warrior aggression.
In a world where Frenzy is the most popular support relic now, Terra is probably the best with it. The Earthen Fury does a similar idea where you're damage amplifying yourself, you're hindering your opponent's damage, you're bursting down these objectives very quickly. Not only that, you're also kind of mitigating what Hercules is going to be able to do by preventing the pulls and the pushes as long as you have a monolith up.
That's exactly right. Terra's going to be not nearly as good of a target to get pulled back in by this Hercules as the Knights ban away the Soul. This is a lot of attention they've paid towards CycloneSpin. I imagine the EmilZy comp was for Van Mid. They didn't want to play it there. But the Jingwei, the Freya, and then now with the Merlin already picked up the Soul, that all has to be Cyclone.
Which leads me to believe it's going to be another CycloneSpin pick ban, right? Like, the Soul is not really something that he plays at all.
Not a ton.
It surprises me, right? Like, normally it's PK that brings out the Soul. Zyrhoes has played it before, I believe in the last week matchup, but...
Oh, we forgot to mention, we still need a solo laner for the Knights, because that Jormungandr is obviously for Zyrhoes.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. No, it absolutely is. There's no world.
I agree. It's very likely for Zyrhoes. I would say it's 80-20 for Zyrhoes.
Yeah, because still Osiris is open, so that's going to be for Deathwalker. And we haven't really seen where Cabom's pick is. That's probably Erlang Shen for Scream.
I think so.
So still undecided.
A lot of attention towards Cyclone. Now they're banning away the Hachiman. They don't want to leave any hunters available for him. And I do think that in a world where Scream already has his pick, limiting CycloneSpin is the next most effective way to really hinder the Splyce roster. And you're maybe not 100% sure what kind of stuff Cabom even likes. So the only person left that you have any information on is CycloneSpin. So just ban his stuff out.
This is a test to see how Splyce is going to react in MSI. This is what PK is doing. This is not really to focus out CycloneSpin this game. It's to focus him out in MSI if they ever face off. I'm like, all right, if all of these hunters are off the table, where is your next go-to?
What would he want in that world as Unbots is banned away by Splyce, so they don't want to give Adapting that pick. It looks like they put a bunch of attention towards him with the Mercury, the Kali, and the Hunbots, so a lot of tools taken away. They'll go ahead and grab the Arachne, though. This is something that Adapting's been playing all Season 6 long. He loves this Katana tree, builds that, skips the boots, and just hunts you down.
A smart pickup, not to say the Arachne is the smart pickup, but to pick Adapting's pick here, leaving Deathwalker as the last counter pick matchup to be like, all right, Cabom, we're about to see what you have. I'm going to counter you. We're going to have some fun in that solo lane.
You know, this is so funny because, I mean, I'm sure that Cabom is able to be there for them during scrims, but in the SPL, when they're playing, the coaches can't be in those comms directly. They can listen in, but they can't be a part of that communication. I wonder what it'll be like to have your coach literally in the game now as that extra voice. That might be interesting.
I hope that we can get that kind of content out there. Just to see it. That would be some good stuff. You know, like a couple of these teams have released some of their comms in the scrim videos. Rivals is definitely out there. No, I never knew that PBM was the best mechanical player.
Oh, yeah.
West side? Was it West
Mississippi?
side?
Yeah. I think it's east of the Mississippi, right? Because we're east of it. I'm not 100%
that's
sure.
right.
Yeah, something like that. But Chernobog and the Kuzenbo come in. Kuzenbo makes some sense. Great up against the Jing Wave if she wants crit, and the Arachne to limit some of that auto attack. But Chernobog, Toli, you've told me before, I feel like, that you think Chernobog's a bit of a sleeper right now.
It really is. It's the global pressure that he provides, being able to just come back in. Not only that, it's a safety factor where you reset your dash when you go choose a different target when you're up in that living nightmare. So it's another safety hunter as opposed to the Hachiman and the Freyas. Doesn't have the same kind of pushing power, but late game with that attack speed steroid, you can easily burn through a lot of these tanks once you get either crit or chin size, depending on how the game progresses.
And what path it is that he wants to build. So right now, Splyce have a great roster. I feel like that's good at multiple points. Even if the Hercules falls a bit behind, they have this Kuzenbo to still provide them a pretty tanky presence. And then Merlin's always scary. But Sun Wukong coming through from Deathwalker, this feels a bit old school for him. It's something he definitely likes to play, but we don't see as much of SWK nowadays.
No, definitely not. It's just a safe soul laner. You can clear effectively. You're not really going to get out-cleared by Kuzenbo, no matter what god you're playing. There's no real point of playing an auto attacker against the Kuzenbo because he's going to pop his spiked shells, reset his cooldown, so you're actually enticing him to get another way to clear if you're going to try to bully him out. So instead, his goal is to be out-clear Cabom and then rotate to the mid lane faster.
Probably a lot of proxying, I think. Sun Wukong
Yeah.
very good at that and very safe at that too, right? Because he can usually get away pretty well. So he might even just choose to disregard Cabom this game. It kind of
think
feels
so.
like that. Yeah, just move beyond him and know that Cabom probably won't be at that position where you can truly punish him on the back end.
And I'm expecting a lot of attention onto CycloneSpin, right? Like, the way this Arachne pick was drafted leads me to believe that adapting is going to get off to an early start. Maybe look for a blink play.
Maybe look for something like that to be aggressive. But PK and Splyce both have good drafts on paper. We're just going to see how these ones end up working in actual application once they get into the game. Game number 1, get it over to the casters.
Out there, John, and totally great stuff on the desk. And as we get into this match, I'm really looking at this Kuzenbo first and foremost because I think it's an excellent answer to Arachne. Arachne is, everybody knows about her in ranked. She has that pub stomp capability. Here in a competitive environment, a little bit different, still very powerful, and Kuzenbo can answer that.
I'm also looking at the Kuzen for the Jingwei and even the Terra to a certain extent. Sun Wukong also could possibly get punished. A lot of dashes basically there for Pittsburgh Knights in terms of disengage or even initiation that Splyce could potentially cut off with a well-timed watery grave.
Certainly something to look out for right now. Cabom will be playing the solo Kuzenbo. I'll be playing play-by-play commentator, color brought to you by Melissa Taco Posada. And then, of course, on the observation, Doug, the one and only. So Cabom filling in here for his squad. Obviously, Splyce in the wings when it comes to their solo lane. Not really having a replacement for Divios just yet. Baskin momentarily. So Cabom, the coach, taking the battlefield. Shoutouts to coaches of the past, like Coach Cassier. We had Coach Mike on the Paladin side do things. So coaches playing have happened before. What's your expectations for Cabom here, Taco?
I think for Cabom, Cabom's always been an above-average skilled level player. So it's not like Splyce are taking somebody completely unfamiliar with pro-level play. Right now, though, Splyce focused on this blue buff invade and doesn't appear to go successfully. Deathwalker and EmilZy now. Actually, Deathwalker going to be level 2 already. Could be trouble here for Aror. Still looking for the escape. Got hit by that 72 transformations out of the Wukong with the Tiger Stun, but even still, the Bomb and Aror doing just enough to get by over here in solo.
Meanwhile, across the way, Pittsburgh Knights. Zyrhoes going for the Knights special of the mid lane Yorman Gunder. He was the first one to do this, and still largely the only one. We've seen 1 or 2 players try it out, but Zyrhoes definitely is stuck to it for sure.
Oh, Zyrhoes, though, in a whole world of trouble here. Not going to be able to get away, and that'll be Scream with the first blood on the Erlang. A quick and easy gank into Min, and Jorm, well, until he's level 5, doesn't really have an escape here. Beautiful pin placement there by Scream.
Early for Erlang. That's what they're looking for. Scream to get off to a nice start. Scream can be a catalyst for this Splyce team for sure. 1 versus 3, though, might not be the matchup he wanted. And adapting will get the kill, so Pittsburgh Knights walk into their own kill column.
And that isn't as bad as being first blooded, but is still pretty rough stuff there for Scream. He's already missing out on a decent bit of that solo side map farm, was trying to make up for it there. If he'd been successful with that back RB's invade against adapting, it might have forced Pittsburgh Knights to play a little bit more focused around their own timer rotations.
Yep.
But now, since he was effectively punished for attempting that, he'll just have to rely on making it in time to defend Cabom's blue buff.
A rough decision there. Arachne usually not somebody you want to invade into. Scream right now protecting his own invade as Pittsburgh Knights look for the blue buff.
EmilZy, though, could be in some trouble here. Gets Sumo slammed back towards C2 tower, but not actually close enough to take any shots, so Scream's going to abandon any further aggression and prioritize farming out the rest of the map.
And that's what he should be doing. He needs to go ahead and farm. You don't want to fight the Arachne anytime soon. She's going to be finishing off that katana.
Golden Blade.
Golden Blade. Golden Blade. That makes sense. Golden Blade.
Adapting might want the clear.
Is she the only character that still uses Golden Blade in the jungle?
I don't think so. I think it comes down to player preference. Bakasura can definitely still utilize it. I think... I mean, while it's not conventional anymore, there has still been the odd Mercury every here and there, but Mercury and Baka are picks that have kind of fallen off a little bit as Season 6 developed because
Sure.
more and more teams began prioritizing, I think, zone control. And so all those auto-attack heavy base junglers have kind of fallen off just a little bit here due to the likes of Jorm or Erlang, Hercules. They're all just such heavy hitters in the early game. You need some kind of way to combat that.
Some sort of counter pressure for sure. Aurora's been bringing the pressure lately on the Hercules support. Definitely one of his stronger picks, in my opinion. Anytime I see Aurora in the Herc, I know that it's not... Splyce, it's tough. They're coming in with a disadvantage, frankly. No disrespect to Cabom, just not the same level of play. But Aurora and the Hercules, you know, this is one of those picks, as long as I don't cast just curse him, that can really make an impact. Not that time, however, as the support player for Splyce falls down, and Pittsburgh Knights get their second kill.
To kind of clarify on that Hercules support pick option there for Aurora, normally this is a pick that I think Aurora can afford to be a little bit more reckless on. Mitigate wounds as well is such a heavy helping hand to a Hercules, but right now Splyce, they need a helping hand around this blue buff here for Cabom. Aurora's going to make it out of the base in time, only level 4 when he died, so with 3 members able to defend, now Pittsburgh Knights are going to abandon Splyce's blue buff and instead head for a free Totem of Coup. But the thought is still being, or the message is still being spread to Pittsburgh Knights that Splyce aren't just going to roll over and let them take whatever they want for free in the early game.
Nice push from Cabom, puts Deathwalker under the tower. An extra kick from Aror puts him even further. But Deathwalker has animals. A little bit of help from EmilZy as well, but the knock-up Ox good enough. And DW able to escape, no problem.
That was a great stun there from EmilZy as well to prevent Aror from looking for the Earthbreaker follow-up to try and pull DW back into the tower line for some additional shots there. But considering Deathwalker still had that Wukong ultimate, I don't think he was really as threatened as it might have seemed.
Exactly, he still had access to, you know, his extra life there. So, not a concern. Adapting concerned and into the ultimate. Safe and sound, no problem. Aurora can't really follow that one.
Aggressive, though, from Scream. Venenu tosses out the Ice Storm, and next thing you know, there's a blink mink on your tail there. So adapting, playing it safe rather than sorry. Not really trying to initiate there without any other member from PK nearby. And I want to actually go back to that original question you asked me when we have a little bit of downtime here in terms of Cabom and what his contribution to Splyce will be as the substitute for this team.
Right, because normally when we see, you know, off fill-ins, it's like sit there, play chalk, be careful, and we'll gank your lane a lot. Kuzenbo is a real pick. He's really playing the game here.
Well, it's not only that, but when I was initially talking to Splyce as their correspondent, I mean, they were telling me, hey, yeah, we don't want to say anything just yet about where Cabom will be going. So I'm not even fully convinced that it's a guarantee we see Cabom play solo throughout the entirety of this set. I think that there is some possibility for a little bit of spice to come from Splyce.
If anything, CycloneSpin obviously started his career over there on the short side, and CycloneSpin was kind of a menace on that short side. You know, could Cabom go over and play the carry role, in your opinion?
I think Cabom could play just about any role and fill it for the most part, mechanically speaking.
He plays at a role player's level. You know, I don't think he'd take any offense. He's not gonna, you know, be Baskin. That's not gonna happen. But I think it's a far stretch from what you might be expecting hearing a coach is filling in.
I think what Splyce lose the most without Baskin or really just any other traditional solo laner right now is just having somebody to play free setup, man. Because I think one thing that has really helped out Splyce in their past few sets is the fact that Baskin is so flexible in his God Pull options that Splyce weren't really restricted by their solo lane. There are some teams where I think that they do have limited compositions they can opt for because there are just players that can't really flex in the same way. And Baskin was always just somebody who I think really understands how to split apart a team fight.
Baskin just, yeah, I mean, Baskin, there's a number of things. Baskin deserves his own, you know, his own show, right? He's the guy. He did it, you know?
People might be fed up with us gassing him up all the time.
Sorry.
But quite honestly, it's just like the Fight OK effect, man. If you're playing that good all the time, what else are we supposed to say?
For real, I mean, I even part of me, you know, you root for the storyline as a commentator. Part of me was like, what if he comes to the pro league and is bad because he's been in the minor league for so long? And then after 7 minutes of watching his first game, I laughed at myself. I said, what are you, high? I mean, Baskin bad? That's not how that works. And he ran the games for Splyce. An adaptation for sure. You know, man, I asked Splyce, I said, what is the chance of Baskin sticking around? And they're like, 0. What if they win MSI?
Then I think that 0 goes to a 1%. But 1% is better than 0.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Possibly so. I don't know, though. We'll really just have to wait and see when that moment arises. But right now, it's all about mid lane and Scream getting the job done on this Erlang in the Erlang game. He is keeping Pittsburgh Knights on their toes.
Yeah, for sure. And Pittsburgh Knights, though, to their credit, and that's why we've been, you know, allowed to talk about Splyce as fill-in, is because Pittsburgh Knights have been doing a great job at kind of neutering the assault. They found a little bit of a lead here just by repeated invades. Votes in a little bit of trouble, but ultimately will get away. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. Bring Pittsburgh down to half or lower, and then they bounce.
Love this discipline, though, from Scream. Completely ignores any further aggression against Vote. Aror, though, could be in some trouble here, looking for a decent getaway moment so he can try and get the driving strike out of the way, but now a backup from Scream. Ninth turn Blessing's going to force Adapting's ultimate, and this Arachne is actually on the run.
I really thought that as soon as I saw Aror get trapped in the blue pit with the Arachne, I thought for sure he was toasted, but a really well-timed driving strike. Arachne's cocoon. You get stunned on the third basic attack, and it has a duration. So Aror waits for the 1-2 punch, then driving strikes, and the duration of the buff wears off. So the Arachne couldn't find the stun.
Well, I think also the Excavate, that CC immunity cleanse as well to kind of prompt the rest of PK from wanting to funnel into that purple buff that Aror had kind of locked himself inside of with Adapting. And it was all necessary, I think, for Aror to live there. I think if he tries to move further back into EmilZy's monolith and take his chances there instead, he probably just gets rooted into his own death. So really good on-the-fly decision-making, I think, from Aror, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough to defend these oracles.
Oh, not at all. Aror, nice job.
You actually got some done.
Yeah, no, I misheard you.
Done.
I was on the other side. Aror just with an easy kickflip takes him away. And so Splyce were able to get objective vision on the Gold Fury. And taking a look at the vision so far, Splyce have a decent amount. About 3 wards on the left side, 1 in the mid, and then only 1 on the right side of the map. It is rather early. We're likely to see that swap around a little bit later. Pittsburgh Knights, not as much vision on the Gold Fury right now. So that might be a look for Splyce to go into if they want to try and take this lead. Pittsburgh previously had almost a 2K lead. It's now since been shortened up about 1,500.
I don't think the Pittsburgh Knights really feel that threatened by an early objective pull from Splyce because they've done a really good job of just keeping tabs on Venenu. Zyrhoes is primarily just stuck around this mid lane ever since that first blood. And I think that Adapting, well, all that thought though, because Auror's going to take Zyrhoes out one more time with the Excavate there to finish the job. And this is the threat of the Hercules support. It deals so much damage early on.
It really does. You know, there's 100% scaling, and obviously Aror doesn't have a ton of power, but the base damage also very high. And while you're not always looking for your support to do damage, specifically against Kronos and Jormungandr, where they have these get out of jail free cards, but with the windup, everybody's like, well, how do you kill Jorm? Well, you kill him before he ults. Once he ults, you're toasted. But if you have the burst damage to take him down, PS Zero's not building tanky and won't be building tanky. So as long as Aror can continue to find the stun, which, by the way, the Jorm is going to take extra damage because he doesn't get knocked up, etc. So Aror can kind of double debuff the mid lane Jormungandr, provide extra damage. I mean, Aror, with some teammates, Zyrhoes is going to have a bad time this game if Splyce are allowed to jump on him like that over and over again.
Now I'm thinking about some of those other carries from Pittsburgh Knights, actually, Tom. Vo Adapting EmilZy. Can you imagine getting sumo pushed into a driving strike, into a possible Earthbreaker? The likelihood of that CC chain actually taking place, you know, well, it's fun to think about. But
that's part of my favorite, the old the Sobek fling into the Hercules fling into the kick.
Into the OG Arachne pool off her ultimate.
Oh yeah, man. The old school stuff. Cabom there trying to defend his blue buff, won't be able to, unfortunately, so down he will go.
I think that this was an obvious sacrifice, though, that Splyce decided to make here, because leaving Cabom on solo island to deal with Deathwalker, I think it's a little unrealistic to expect Cabom to solo DW in this type of circumstance, but
probably, I'd say.
Cabom has definitely done a decent job at staying relevant and at least keeping Deathwalker distracted over here in solo lane, while DW is able to build up a decent experience lead. Hold that thought, though. I think the fights might break out over here in gold.
Adapting's going to blink into the knockup, though. Blinking into crowd control is one of the worst feelings. Adapting blinks into a knockup that wasn't even targeting him and just has to turn around. Dead serious. If Adapting blinks in and doesn't get knocked up there, like, instantly, PK probably commit and then win the fight, maybe even get a Gold Fury. So much happens if Adapting doesn't get knocked up after that blink.
Hey, can't predict them all. And first Splyce, sometimes that's just the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
So Scream one more time, gonna wind up losing his back harpies to Deathwalker. And notice how DW isn't even wasting his time with trying to heckle Scream or keep him from backing. He just wants to farm and then he wants to get out. He is hyper farming this solo side of the map. And I think it's only a matter of time now that this T1 tower has gone down here in solo before Splyce start having to deal with this boosted Sun Wukong.
And he's going to be a problem. Sun Wukong, one of the characters that people don't really go to that often in the solo lane. And part of the reason, I think, is he lives in that shock world where he needs to do damage to be relevant because he has annoyance, not control. He has knockup and slow, not real dedicated hard stun. So you want to go other options usually. The Jormungandr with a little bit of both. What Cabom is doing a little bit of both. Splyce right now looking at the Gold Fury. 25% already down. Zyrhoes goes to the ult, and that forces the retreat. Deathwalker shows up right side. The knockup from the big worm kind of negated. Cabom finally gets knocked up. This Gold Fury picked up one more time. Pittsburgh Knights still struggling. Nobody finds a kill.
Cyclone, though, getting some good AA damage into Deathwalker. Now Deathwalker going to be forced into that somersault cloud from a blink pin initiation out of Scream. DW is going to retreat towards the mid lane, but Pittsburgh Knights have still softly defended against Splyce, but Splyce pulling this Gold Fury one more time. Votes here to try and help out EmilZy, and Splyce just not ready to fully commit just yet.
Gold Fury would be the play for Splyce. This would tie the game. This would tie the game. This would tie the game if Pittsburgh Knights don't steal it away. Big plays by PK. Venenu punishes EmilZy. But if I'm Pittsburgh, I am dancing all the way to the Steel City. Big boy steal right there. As Splyce are not able to finish what they started.
It was a big steal, but I'm not convinced that the Pittsburgh Knights really feel all that fantastic about it, because the fight leading up to that steal, that was pretty one-sidedly in Splyce's favor, and that's concerning. Cabom doing an excellent job, I think, on that Kuzumbo to really zone out Vote and Adapting early on. And by forcing those ultimates from the get-go, we also just have to credit that to Aror's Excavate. This Herc and his patience, I think, pulling the trigger on dropping that boulder has been a big helping hand for Venenu to find better displacement against Pittsburgh Knights.
I got to agree that Pittsburgh Knights is definitely not so thrilled about the fight, but the Gold Fury that they just get, if Splyce get it, it's a high game. Pittsburgh Knights have to back off. That's actually one of my favorite Gold Furies when a team is down 2,000 gold, because if the team gets it, if the team down 2k gold gets it, you essentially bring the game back to parity. And if the winning team steals it or gets it, all of a sudden you have a real lead, because 2k is just enough to feel powerful, but not enough to actually do something. But that 4,000 mark is where you really can start leaning into your advantage. And so I love that Gold Fury. It's always one of my favorites. And watching Pittsburgh Knights steal that away and only lose their support, that is a big deal.
Definitely a trade that Pittsburgh Knights aren't going to be upset about. I can definitely agree with that one. But it's just one of those things where it's unsettling as a team that wins the objective to lose the fight so convincingly.
Yeah, and you've got it in the back of your mind for sure. right? You get 100 on the test, but you do miserably on the extra credit, which is what the next test is about, and you're just sitting there like, all right, so for now we're good, but what happens next time? And I think that's what you're kind of getting at is PK is like, all right. We stole the Gold Fury from them, but guys, you realize they beat us, and we're supposed to take that Gold Fury, right? And so,
well, they were ahead of Splyce
Yeah.
before the objective was even pulled, and yet they're seemingly struggling against Splyce. But when we say ahead, I mean, I've got to use the
2K,
term rather
yeah.
loosely because honestly, the only real lead disparity between these two teams right now is taking place from solo. But Cabom's on a Guardian in comparison to Deathwalker on the Wukong, a little bit more warrior-based. Until he gets those Urchin stacks, I think that Pittsburgh Knights are still pretty vulnerable in their team fight.
certainly could be. Right now, 3-2, so Splyce do have a little bit more kills than Pittsburgh for sure.
Merlin just kind of evens the score.
Okay.
I think he just burns through tanks so fast
Yeah.
that he makes it feel like they're not tanks at all. But I do really love how Pittsburgh Knights continue trying to exploit this solo side of the map.
And the Op Shard route rush as well. Cabom going to be in trouble here, uses the sumo, but Aror might be available. And he will be, just like that. Aror shows up, and Adapting and Deathwalker have to be out. Everybody else paying attention to the mid lane. Venenu defending by himself. Scream shows up, and the wave is killed.
Good recognition from Scream to try and provide some backup for his mid laner. CycloneSpin thinking about trying to siege that T1 tower, but will back off as soon as he notices Deathwalker's teleporting over. Just no real reason for Cyclone to really risk himself right now, especially not when it's so close to an Oni Fury spawn point, because if Cyclone goes down, Pittsburgh Knights might be able to take that T1 tower and duo, and then Splyce don't really have much of a fallback option when they're trying to challenge inside of the Gold Fury pit. Little spaz out, Chernivog. That specialty. You don't like the emo? The disco ball?
I've never seen that.
You never seen him spaz out?
Sorry, you got a cast.
It's like a diagonal Tasmanian devil. I don't know.
Just
I
walking down the lane doing McTwist Misty flips. I don't know, man. I've never seen that. That's wild. Oh, man. These hunters, though, these carries in this game, this has been the quintessential example of the fact that carries these days, oh, nice try, Scream. Carries these days just get to sit in the lane and farm, and they never get touched. And that's an exaggeration, because we usually see at least one jungle gank, maybe one mid lane rotation, maybe one... Not this time. We literally haven't seen anything. One assist on each of them just before. Like, these guys are level 20 and have been for 2 minutes. It's insane.
A lot of farming that's been taking place. EmilZy with the power blocks of a lifetime. Using that wall. Aror could be in some trouble, instead getting a driving strike through EmilZy, create an opening for himself at last. Oni Fury now being surrounded by the Pittsburgh Knights, Zyrhoes and Adapting finally starting to make their rotations inwards, but Splyce, they're still staggered, and Oni Fury is low.
Yeah, it's got about 10% to go. Aror walks into the middle of everything, gets knocked up. Splyce steal it away from Pittsburgh Knights this time. But PK take the life of the support. Another knockup on Cabom. The body blocks are real, and here comes Zyrhoes out of the ultimate. Cabom once stood, and now he will lay 4 kills in total for Pittsburgh Knights. They lose the Oni Fury, but win the team fight.
And lose their front line in the process, though. Cabom and Aror both being out for 20 seconds and some change means that Pittsburgh Knights could possibly start trying to pressure onto this Fire Giant. And they've got the burst damage to do so, although they've got to watch out for Venenu. As far as confirmation is concerned, I think I would have to favor the Merlin. And with Chernivog's Living Nightmare already being procced across the map, Pittsburgh Knights know what's up.
Well, there's another blink in, this time from Scream, but he's going to get jumped on immediately by Adapting. That said, the damage goes the other way. Adapting is out of the fight. The rest of Pittsburgh Knights now trying to collapse into the mid lane, while EmilZy, Zyrhoes, and Adapting head back to base. So a full retreat now from PK, as again, they find themselves on the losing side. Vote 4 shots, Venenu just shy of the kill.
That crit off the explosive bolts was just nasty right there for Ven. Had no idea he was standing right on top of the ward, so the persistent gust placement from Vote was all too easy to find there. And with Venenu not having Aegis, I would heavily expect Adapting to make this Merling his next target. But with the way Splyce have been handling Adapting in these past couple of fights, I mean, it is a promising look for the team. They're forcing his ultimate so early on that Adapting's not able to rely on it for the chase down potential. And that's kind of more so what Pittsburgh Knights composition screams to me, is that dive potential.
Also, Adapting kind of wants to ult. It's hard to say that an Arachne wants to ult into the team fight, but that slow field is really impactful. A slow field with Zyrhoes Jormungandring around might just win you the team fight. So Splyce keeping that at bay is a really, really big deal. You're right.
Venenu had a really nice arcane placement too of that vortex, just pulling everybody from Pittsburgh Knights inwards into the hailstorm. Escavate gonna come out from Aror in an attempt to steal the Pyromancer, but instead, Pittsburgh Knights are gonna manage to hold on to that one. A nice zone out by Deathwalker is gonna keep the rest of the Splyce members at bay, but losing the Pyromancer, not really too big of a deal. Losing a mid-tower, however, could be a much bigger problem, and Splyce might not have any response for it.
Not at all. Tier 1 tower goes down. Splyce just watching, man. Can't really help him out. Left side, Chernobog doing the thing. CycloneSpin gonna get blinked on. And Chernobog in the wall. Chernobog dashes away. Stunned out. Adapting, waiting here. There's the jump down, and surprise, and Scream.
Adapting had no idea, just too bloodthirsty for the pick, and Cyclone had the perfect bait though. That is something that I would fully expect. Well, he went for the back.
Yep.
Adapting probably assumes that he thinks that he's dead in a 1v1 trade out. Well, that Ickful is going to be no use when you're getting knocked up by the Erlang from behind the wall. Now, with that one pick alone, Splyce actually just going to make the Hail Mary call and go straight to the Fire Giant.
Liking the call, but DW, EmilZy, and Zyrhoes are here. Vote's not. That's a big deal. He is playing on the Jing Wei. Frenzy popped by both sides, it looks like, and Venenu in a bad spot. Chased out to the back end while Deathwalker falls down to Cabom. The coach gets a kill. Pittsburgh Knights on their heels, and Splyce are feeling it.
But they'll abandon the Fire Giant.
But the coach got a kill! Let's see that Cabom player cam. Yeah!
No emotion whatsoever. This is like when Cyclone won Worlds and was like, can I go home now?
I did it. I want to watch.
I'm ready to go watch anime now, please.
Oh, man. Great stuff from Splyce. But Pittsburgh Knights, they lose that team fight. There's nobody that's going to say they won it, but they defended the Fire Giant the first time around. Deathwalker probably a little bit more important than Adapting in the defensive play here. So we'll see what happens. The bomb blinks to the back end to deal with the Hunter. Fire Giant on a thread. Splyce are able to confirm. Zyrhoes is doing work, though. Big damage as CycloneSpin goes down. EmilZy and Adapting both get 2. It's 3 players left here for Splyce, and the chase is on.
Cabom right now trying to escape. Almost has that watery grave up in time and will be able to buy himself just a little bit more time, but look at Vote and Aror with the tower shots.
Oh my goodness, Aror with big plays. The double driving strike into the double flip back. You gotta love it, man. That was just, that's why Aror plays Hark every chance he gets.
But Vote eating the tower aggro is what gets the bettering of Pittsburgh Knights on that last play. If it was anybody else but Vote that's taking the tower aggro, he probably has a chance to survive, but those 2 shots were just enough for Cabom to get in there with another sumo slam. And it hurts, though, for Splyce to have still lost Cyclone and Venenu, 2 primary damage dealers, going to be without that Fire Giant stim. But it's still a start for Splyce, for sure. And considering the fact that they took that challenge head-on with Pittsburgh Knights, Splyce are not scared.
No, and they never have been. I mean, Splyce, this is the team that had the, what was it, just last week with the legendary victory. They were down 20,000 gold. By the way, you want to talk about Jay-Z for 10 minutes? Splyce have tied this game with a stand-in coach. They were down, 4,500 isn't the world's biggest deficit.
We do have to point out, Cabom is no ordinary coach. Like we mentioned at the start of this game, he is an above-average level player, not like
Yes,
regularly.
and I will give my man Cabom91 his absolute credit. That said, not Grandmasters. He's not a Masters level player. There's
No,
definitely
he is Masters.
Oh, is he?
He is Masters.
Oh, I'll
yes.
eat my words. I will eat my words.
I mean, I don't know if
absolutely eat my
he's
words.
qualified most recently into Masters, but he is definitely somebody who
Are you
has
talking
hit
like,
Masters.
like season 0 Masters?
No.
Or?
No. I mean, like,
Okay.
I regularly queue and see Cabom in my
Oh,
games
word.
whenever he
Okay.
decides to play.
I'll
He's
be
definitely
honest.
up there.
I'll be honest. I thought he was more along the lines of like. You remember when Dazer used to fill in for his teams? Dazer was like a high diamond player.
I'd give him mid diamond to low diamond. Yes.
Yeah, like that's
Cabom
where I
is
thought
above that.
that's where I thought Cabom was coming from. So that's actually a really big deal, being able to play. So not as crazy at this level for sure, but certainly not the same level of play that Baskin would bring, and definitely not the same level that DW is used to being against for sure.
Well, Aror right now trying to get the party started, looking for a nice driving strike onto EmilZy, but EmilZy might have gone off a little bit too far into the deep end here. Pittsburgh Knights trying to recover, and Adapting's got Venenu on the run.
CycloneSpin flanking the flank, though. Meanwhile, Zyrhoes perfectly on the mark, and another kill for Cabom. Vote goes down to the Laughing Turtle. Deathwalker in trouble. Aror and Cabom looking at the big guy. Cyclone looking at the bigger guy as Zyrhoes falls down. The double for CycloneSpin as he puts EmilZy in a casket. Cabom with another double kill. They
That might
drop.
actually be it.
They've got another tower to go.
No. They have 3 towers left on the map, but I don't think Splyce are even going to care. They're making this push in onto the left side Phoenix, only Adapting left to play defense, but look at CycloneSpin's health bar. He is fully topped up with a wave on the way.
They've got the Fire Giant, only regular Fire Giant, so not EFG. That said, left side Phoenix goes down, votes up in 15 seconds, Splyce filtering in, Adapting can take care of one, but it's not going to be enough. Splyce with the substitute again continues to win game number 1 as they drop the Cabom on Pittsburgh.
Splyce are not letting anybody through right now, Tom. And the fact that they got that game 1, I mean, the faces on Pittsburgh Knights alone should say a lot. And trust me when I say this, Pittsburgh Knights are not happy right now.
I just watched Vote literally roll his eyes. Look, as we said, we are the storyline is front and center. Cabom is a fill-in, and we've established he's not exactly your average fill-in. He's a Masters level player. He can do this. But the difference between Masters ranked and competitive is still absolutely gigantic. And this guy's standing up, like I said, there's another one. Shout-outs Coach Cassier. Shout-outs Coach Cabom.
And I think that this is where it starts to be a little bit more noticeable. That segment where we talked about Splyce on Esports Weekly, and I was mentioning, hey, Cabom, I mean, he's no Baskin.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's really Baskin, to be fair, though. But it's just the fact that as their coach, he does have a really deep understanding of every single one of these players' play styles, what their preferences are, what kind of rotations they like to make, what kind of janky calls they like to go for. And I think that it's showing up in this set now.
Absolutely. It is so far with 1 victory. Splyce, Pittsburgh Knights. We'll move to game 2. But first, the desk.
A big game 1 victory here for Splyce. Even without Baskin, clearly this team still has a lot of talent to take down a very strong Pittsburgh Knights roster. And they did it in a lot of the ways that we thought, right? They still had Merlin for Venenu. He still looked great. Aurora played his Hercules the way he always does.
Yeah.
Scream on the Erlong Shen. But it's hard not to notice, man, Cabom made some big plays for him.
Towards the end game, yes. He was getting out-farmed in the early portion. To be expected, though, whenever you're against a caliber player like Deathwalker.
Especially on Sun Wukong, right?
Yeah. And the key factor for Splyce was Aror on the Hercules, getting those early kills onto Zyrhoes' Jormungandr. A little out of position, but even then, still, he was actually a level ahead of Venenu, despite all that, because of the teamfight success. And then both of these teams just taking a shot at each other at stealing objectives.
Yes, this Oni Fury, I think, is the one that Splyce ends up stealing. The Gold Fury before that is the one Knight stole from Splyce. So it was back and forth on these objectives here on the duo side of the map. But yeah, this is Adapting getting baited out.
This was an important pick, and I'll tell you why, Finch, because this opened the door for Splyce to transition Adapting's death with a long respawn timer to get the Fire Giant, and then look for this clutch backwards push into the pull. Cabom cleaning things up.
Yeah, Cabom really did step up for them here in this game. And you can see a little bit of relief there for him. See, I'm able to come in and not do too bad. I mean, you heard Taco talking about it. You talked about it before we started. I mean, Cabom's, he might be the coach for this team.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that he's not, mechanically strong. He's played at the SPL level before. Taco talks about now, even still to this day, he's still a strong player. I think it is reasonable to expect that him to be not quite the caliber of everybody else here, but certainly he can still do enough, I think, to where these other 4 players can still find some wins.
Especially when he's transitioning away from his former competitive role, which was the Hunter, to go into the solo lane now. It's no easy task to go up against Deathwalker,
Not at all.
but he played a very safe gut, to be fair. He played a Kuzumbo where there wasn't that much pressure on him in laning phase. There
Not
wasn't
execution heavy, I wouldn't say, right?
Yeah, playing any Guardian specifically, you're looking more for the team fight aspect, right? So Kuzumbo was providing him that aspect. Now, something that he did was interesting was getting the Blink at level 1, transitioning into the Thorns at level 12. Because of that, not having teleport, he was down about 3 to 4 levels from Deathwalker as a result of not getting all that far. But at the end of the day, Splyce was doing a good job of keeping even Stevens with Knight, allowing Cabom to make those team fighting Guardian plays.
And it felt like, to me, Vote really never got a chance to do much here in this game. When Vote often does, I feel like, get to have a big impact for the Knights, but in this one he felt a bit relegated. I wonder how much of that is because of Aror and the presence he was able to have on that Hercules.
Well, not only that, but Scream was like kind of rotating around quite often in the dual lane, and there was so much vision from Pittsburgh Knights spotting out Scream's rotation. There was a time where Vote like backed off, like, whoa, I see you there.
Right.
It wasn't telegraphing. The important thing is when you know a jungler's there, you don't telegraph
That you know. Yeah.
because you want to waste their time as long as possible. So Vote just backed off as far back as he could without actually giving himself away. So
Yeah.
he could still like kind of bait himself out.
Yeah, a lot of the times, like especially in my rank when I'm playing, they'll like look right at the jungler because they have a ward of it. Like, I see you, and I'm like, well, now he knows it's a ward. I mean,
And,
like,
like,
why do that?
And like what they'll do is like they'll throw an ability over the wall, or they'll like taunt, or they'll like wave at you through the wall.
do
It's like
80
you don't do
damage
that.
instead of like maybe getting
Don't
way more
do
value.
that.
Definitely not worth
Don't
it all.
do that.
I'm right there with you totally on that one. Come on, man, you can look a bit better.
Next
Let's
level.
go ahead and do the picks and bans for game number 2, where it's the Pittsburgh Knights, believe it or not, who are up against the ropes a little bit up against Splyce. Now remember,
They predicted it.
This is what Aror said. They would go up 2-0 and then get reverse swept. Could that happen, Totally?
Deathwalker even agreed with Aurora, so
did.
it might just happen. Maybe the strategy that Pittsburgh Knights took by trying to ban away too much of CycloneSpin's
They
gods
banned like 3 of them, didn't they? Yeah.
should have been banning away Cabom.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, do you know what Cabom's going to play?
No,
I
you
should-
really don't.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe now you can be like, all right, no Kuzumbo or something like that, and force Cabom to show you something else. I think that's likely the area where you can expect the shallowest amount of stuff that they've practiced, and not that he's capable of playing, but that they would have limited practice time.
Despite a loss from PK in the last game, they got valuable intel that Chernobog is the go-to for CycloneSpin when all the other hunters that we've seen from him are stripped away. An important intel in the future if they ever run into each other at MSI.
Now, here's another question. What about Venenu on the Merlin? How much do the Knights value that? I mean, Splyce are the ones in second pick that probably have to ban it out. But, I mean, if they leave up Yorm, maybe there's a chance the Knights take that, and they can get the Merlin on the backswing so they don't have to ban it. I wonder if that's what Splyce have to consider here in this spot.
I think that Splyce are more worried about the Yorm, honestly, because PK would, if both of them are open, PK are taking Jormungandr over the Merlin anyway.
Yeah,
so you
leave
leave
it.
both open.
I think so too, and this should almost certainly get you Merlin then. The Knights pass on it. Well, the Splyce can play the Jormungandr very well as well too. They can take that one for themselves. That's such an interesting picks and bans head game though. The Knights would rather Merlin than Yorm here.
A lot of meta mind games, and this is what makes best of 5 so interesting to watch, how the meta develops throughout. Wouldn't be surprised if PK throws a Kuzumbo ban during the secondary phase.
That's the phase where you can do it. So Splyce grab the Yorm and Erlong Shen. They'll probably get Hercules here on this backswing. Unless the Knights leave open Jingwei, no reason not to grab it if it's there. But I would be very surprised if the Knights don't get Jingwei here and then one other pick, maybe a jungler, and let Deathwalker wait a little longer on his pick.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot for PK because if you don't pick Jingwei, then you know Splyce is going to get it.
For sure they will, yeah.
So you got to go into it knowing you're up against a Jingwei. So what hunter do you want to play after the fact? Hachiman is open. You can even play Chernobog if you're Vote. It's very discouraging to play an aggressive hunter against a Jingwei, right? So like Vote being known for his Uller, known for his on her, is not going to pick it into a Jingwei. So he might as well strip that one away.
Oh, they're going to prioritize the Kuzenbo here, thinking that Knights would very likely ban it in the second phase, like you said.
They would've.
And that they want to make sure they prioritize for Cabom, so that's smart. That means now Splyce will likely not be able to get that Hercules. I'd be very surprised if the Knights don't ban that. So we'll have to see what's next for Aror then, in a world where he can't play that. The Jormungandr, though, has already been grabbed, so maybe that's going to him. I mean, do they want to do Ven with Jorm mid here?
That would probably Aror playing the Jormungandr.
Yeah, maybe it is for Aror, because they got the
for
Kuzenbo
Scream, and then Kuzenbo going in the solo lane. That's got to be it. But
So
there's
instead it's Ven and CycloneSpin, so they still need that.
yes, Ven and CycloneSpin. So still taking a shot at CycloneSpin with a Chernobog ban. I like that idea more because the global pressure is really annoying to handle. The slows that those little clones provide, you don't want to deal with that. And also, I would rather deal with a Soul that's immobile to an extent than a Chernobog and a Hachiman.
Kronos, Freya, Chernobog, all already taken off the board. Jingwei picked up for the Knights, so Soul would certainly make some sense to limit, but instead it's the Nuwa. They want to try and take a shot at both Ven and at CycloneSpin here instead of doubling down, which didn't exactly work for them last time anyway. So now Splyce get to make their decision. Looks like they're talking to Ven. No, they'll get the Hachiman first and let Venenu respond. Maybe they can still flex that Jorm, and that's part of what they're considering. Maybe he can play it mid too.
I don't think that's going to be the case.
Maybe not,
I don't think anyone besides Zyrhoes really plays Jormungandr middle.
He likes it.
You got to be a special kind of mid player to play Jormungandr mid, and Zyrhoes definitely fitting that bill. Nuwa's an interesting ban, but I don't think that CycloneSpin would have played it anyway. Now you leave him with Hachiman, he's just really safe again, right?
Yes.
So this is another matchup for Vote that he's just going to be passively farming. We're not going to be seeing much out of him until he gets about 3 or 4 items completed.
Interesting, the Osiris comes in, and this feels a lot different from Wukong. Wukong is like nearly insta-clear the wave, and he'll just kind of push past you and go do, you know, proxy or go steal camps and stuff. Osiris, he'll bully you in lane, man. He is looking to fight, so things might be a little tougher for Cabom this time if that does get locked in.
Osiris is a good pick into a Jormungandr teamfight late game. When Jormungandr already uses the World Serpent, you drop the Judgment Tether, you can follow him through and guarantee stun.
Right, when he goes in the stealth, yeah.
Burst him down as quickly as possible.
That should be pretty good for keeping up with him, though it is probably the Kuzenbo over there, though this might be a bit of flex from Splyce. This is a tricky team. That's why I'm throwing out maybe the Jorm mid, maybe the Kuzenbo. They think Knights know that that's what they want for Cabom, and maybe they will flex that Jorm back over to solo. This is the kind of team that can try and play those games with you a bit in picks and bans as Pele gets locked in.
A very agile jungler, similar to the likes of Arachne, and the way that Adapting built that last game, he built the katanas and also building Talari boots. Normally he's been building katanas without boots entirely, but even more movement speed that build. And then also, interestingly enough, going for Ikavol, which is why he wanted to take that 1v1 fight earlier against CycloneSpin to reduce that attack speed, but Scream never going to allow a 1v1 if he has something to say about it.
No, not if he can get in there and throw his hat into the ring as Ra being hovered for Splyce. I mean, that one's definitely going to have Venenu's name all over it if they grab it. But, I mean, you got to be worried about that with a Pele already on the board. She's already so good at closing that gap and getting to you, and Ra does not have a lot of ways to get away.
With all the healers up, Ra would be probably my least picked one that I would want.
Yeah.
Because the heal is stationary, and you're going to want to run away against a Pele and Osiris that's running at you constantly. Like, if anything, I'm picking Chang'e, I'm picking maybe even the Hell, so that way we can still move aggressively or defensively while I'm still healing the team. But Ra, too stationary against the aggressive nature of PK's front line.
I think so too. He could be a bit of a sitting duck, but the heal could certainly be strong. They're thinking a lot on this one as they kind of hover over the Ra. I mean, like you said, other healers, some nice options, but Ven plays things like Discordia pretty well for potential.
There you go.
Oh, all right then.
You hit the nail right on the head, Finch. He is well known for his Discordia. It's probably why they won Worlds in Season 4 with United. That Discordia playing a huge critical role there. And against this composition, I think Fafnir is the target. Transforming into the Draconic form, you're going to get that Golden Apple of Discordia, get crippled, a lot of burst damage to follow.
Well, they definitely have a potent composition if they can make their way to late game. One word totally, you think Splyce has this or PK?
I'm following the script. Splyce is going to win this one, but then they're going to get reverse swept.
Following the 0-2 script then. Let's see if that's how it works in practice and get it back over to Tom and Taco.
Thanks a lot, guys. Game number one, a little bit of a surprise, honestly. Let's just be straight up. I think a lot of people expected Pittsburgh Knights to take this. But at the end of the day, you know, Cabom just did it. Being realistic, though, you know, we spoke after the game a little bit. I got a chance to speak to resident expert Raymond Peckies, and he was able to talk me through just like, listen, you're going to be behind a little bit in the early game, but Cabom is a high-level player and a coach, knows how to team fight, knows what needs to happen, and that's all you really need on the Splyce team when you've got your other carries working.
Well, I think that's exactly why Pittsburgh Knights are opting for a much stronger team fighting composition here in Game 2. Game 1, it felt a lot more pick-oriented as the focus. I mean, usually is when Arachne is your jungler of choice.
Sure.
But Pele is going to kind of have the same sort of mentality, except I think a little bit more relevancy in terms of the team fighting potential. I think that for adapting, the big issue was that he was oftentimes just getting forced out of that Arachne ultimate too early on before the engagements even began. So he couldn't really play the fight the same way, knowing that he had to be a little bit more cautious about getting caught out.
Certainly something in the mindset. Always on the mind for sure. As we look at the picks, Cabom back on the Kuzenbo. Kuzenbo safe. Something Cabom knows how to play himself. Also, though, a very sly answer to Jingwei, who is the default hunter of choice, it feels like.
She has been the flavor of the month, I think, in that hunter role, and it's largely because of the fact that she has so much survivability, just doesn't ever really feel like a bad pick option for teams to fall back on. And for Vote, especially in this matchup against CycloneSpin, I think that what Pittsburgh Knights are intending for this Jingwei to accomplish is just safe farm until team fights where Vote can run rampant. But Cabom on that Kuzenbo was just doing such an excellent job controlling Vote the whole way through. Just was not letting that Jingwei have room to breathe, and CycloneSpin actually could be in a little bit of trouble here as Adapting's gonna rotate over from speed buff straight away into the purple.
But Scream's here too, gets the first kill as he knocks up and knocks down Vote. Still looking for more though, as Adapting running away. CycloneSpin and Scream gonna give up the chase, but that's how you respond. Bang, bang, Splyce. First on the board in wins, first on the board in game 2 in kills.
Oh, and it might not end there either. EmilZy, though, going to be able to hop out just as Cabom pushes him back in for that T1 tower shot over in solo. So Aror and Cabom doing a decent job holding things down on the opposite side of the map from Duo. But Deathwalker and EmilZy, definitely nothing to scoff at. Still need to be wary of what this Fafnir and Osiris can do.
Mid lane matchup seems to be kind of, as far as these carries are concerned, I think we're going to see the same thing we saw last game.
Quiet.
Whole lot of nothing.
Well, no, we take that back. I can't say that the whole way through because Splyce did punish Zyrhoes twice in the mid lane. And I say punish like almost as if Zyrhoes did something incredibly wrong, and he didn't. He was just a little bit too far outside of that T1 tower line, and Scream just happened to get the better end of him with that Erlang pin. And I'm almost curious if Pittsburgh Knights do wind up losing game 2, which I'm not going to pretend like it's a heavy possibility, because I think that Splyce taking back-to-back W's off of Pittsburgh Knights with a sub is a bit of a stretch. But if it does go down, then I think that's when Pittsburgh Knights might need to start having the discussion about what to do with this Erlang.
I absolutely have to agree. And I mean, just in general, what they have to do with their team in general if they're losing again to the sub, you know, that's fool me once type scenario. Cabom here trying to help out the defense as his blue buff invade comes through for the Pittsburgh Knights. But Splyce have numbers here, 3 versus 3. As Aror on the support Jorm, by the way, haven't mentioned that one just yet, will show up. Cabom, Scream, and Aror figure it out and get the blue buff. Nice defense from the Splyce boys.
Good patience as well from Scream. Only proc that first ability on the Erlang to get some bonus damage on those autos, but made sure to wait out the Spirit Flail from Deathwalker and even the little Spiderlings from Adapt, or excuse me, not Spiderlings, but the Pele toss-out, the kickball toss-out, as I like to call it. And
the kickball toss.
It's good patience.
You got to break down the kickball one for me.
Well, it kind of goes down, then it comes back in. And you know, like when you have those.
Do you know what a kickball is?
Well, there's kickball,
Do you
but
mean
there's
boomerang?
No. I mean in the very sense, if you've ever played football, or I should say soccer, But if you ever played it, and if you ever wanted to practice your juggling skills,
Okay.
and you get like a little net and you wrap it
Okay,
around
yeah,
and then you
yeah,
kick
yeah.
it up and down. It's not exactly the same effect, but that's just what I think of when I see that Pele ability.
I get that. No, I get that. I get that 100%. I didn't at first. But after that, I totally get that. I was like, do you mean boomerang?
It kind of works like a boomerang too. It's just like a ball. Pyro. A pyro ball there from Pele.
You ever played tennis?
I have played tennis for sure. Not very well, but it is an incredibly fun sport.
You can light the ball on fire.
I would much rather not.
Splyce, on the other hand, trying to light this one on fire for sure. That first win, man, you want to talk about the mental aspect. Everybody, the immediate conversation is going to be the type of momentum that Splyce has, et cetera, et cetera. Taco and I were much more focused on the other side of that commentary, which was, how mad does adapting look right now?
Well, adapting, I think, on any given day looks pretty angry.
Sure.
I think that is just the perpetual resting face of some of the Pittsburgh Knights members to look rather angry. But that doesn't mean that they always are. I would believe adapting to be disappointed, though, for his team to lose, because Pittsburgh Knights is a team that I know for a fact holds themselves to incredibly high standards.
I applaud your use of euphemism there. Disappointed. You and I have known Kenneth for years. He is one of the fiercest competitors. This guy is angry. He's heated. He's mad. I mean, look at Zyrhoes.
Might be
Okay,
even
Zyrhoes
more
always
upset for adapting, having his ultimate forced out by Erlang inside of his own jungle. But there's no assistance from Vote. He was trapped underneath that T1 tower because of some good push power from CycloneSpin, and Splyce just continuing to work their way inwards.
Zyrhoes is able to... Interesting. Scream walked away from that, and I don't know if he needed to. The flicker was like 2 inches forward.
I think he was expecting adapting to be coming back out of base
Some more
and
follow-up.
didn't want to get caught out. Even with the Pele ultimate having just been pulled, she still does a decent amount of damage that can be kind of risky for members like Venenu and Aror as far as their escape is concerned.
Smart play then. Fair play. Discipline is always better than dying.
I think that's something that Splyce also know how to handle incredibly well, though. They pick their fights really well.
Yeah, that's been why why they were successful in game number 1, as a large part of the reason why they've been successful in general. Cabom and Scream almost get Deathwalker again here in game number 2. Not going to be the case, though. EmilZy show up here and just provide some help for Deathwalker.
EmilZy is just trying to help clear out the remainder of the wave. Deathwalker without that Lord of the Afterlife. Almost thought that Scream was going to follow that up, but believed that Scream's pin was still on cooldown for a moment longer. And Scream also, I think, showing a lot of reservation.
Oh!
This is a solo kill.
That was fantastic. Oh, come CycloneSpin on the run. Votes a little too far. Uses the jungle geometry there to avoid the straight shot from the Hachiman. But I get excited anytime I see the Aiijutsu stun.
The caster's curse there for sure. CycloneSpin, unfortunately, breaking left, anticipating Vote to have gone back into the lane for tower protection. Instead, Vote chooses the jungle as his defensive strategy there. But would have been a solo kill if he'd taken that Hachiman down the jungle lane instead.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Scream knocked up. Deathwalker gonna jump on him as well. Cabom here, pushing underneath the tower, getting the spin, and adapting goes down to Coach Cabom one more time.
Might not be only adapting either that winds up falling here. EmilZy could potentially get cut off by Aror, and Venenu right next to him. Gonna toss out the strike, catches EmilZy in the process, waiting out the Draconic Transformation though before tossing out the Golden Apple, but Deathwalker intercepts.
Nice play by DW, trying to protect his teammates. Zyrhoes rotating in the big worm. Gonna miss all the shots so far. Cabom and Venenu put on their dancing shoes. That's a my mistake, folks. That was big boy mistake there.
Wait a
Or-
second.
Yeah.
Cabom? Okay, never mind. I thought for a second that Cabom was interested in diving, but unfortunately for Cabom, he realizes too little too late that Deathwalker is already made out with his blue buff, now trying to make out from this T1 tower line, but Deathwalker might have gone a little bit too deep.
Just a little bit. He'll be able to get out, no problem. Scream here, though. might change the plans of Splyce. Cabom and Aror look like they aren't interested in diving the tower. Scream shows up. Might have enabled that thought, but Splyce call it off. Scream now rotating towards the middle lane. Gets chased. Nice, cute blink. That was fun. EmilZy tosses the hammer. He blinks behind him to avoid it. Gotta love it.
Zyrhoes, fortunately enough though for himself, I think recognized that Scream was kind of goading for a blink play opportunity there. Actually takes a couple of steps backwards. So when Scream does push forward, he winds up missing with that 9-turn blessing. And it's for the best, honestly. I think that Merlin, last thing he wants to have to do is have his beads force in the jungle, and that's all that Scream was really after.
Exactly, just looking for a little bit of a nice look so that the secondary gank will be successful. Aror on the Jormungandr. Gotta say that to myself 2 times there, folks. Aror on the Jormungandr here, making the rotation amid. A very Aror character to be played in the support role for sure. High damage, high disruption, somebody that's gonna be pressing W at you. You can't ignore him. Not exactly the most defensive choice, but that's how Aror has literally won a world championship.
Jormungandr is just so gross when it comes to harassing the back line, and especially against gods like the Merlin and Jingwei that are really going to struggle if these team fights go a little bit too awry, because Splyce, all they realistically need to do is separate one or the other. It doesn't even have to be both at the same time. They just need to get Vote and Zyrhoes away from the protection of their front line.
Aror forced into the ultimate. This is a defensive maneuver more so than anything else. Get some damage for the hell of it, and then retreat alongside his teammate. Aror is the guy. If I had to fill in on anyone's team, it would be Auror's team. Aror, I just feel like is gonna. Auror's helping Cabom here in the solo lane here in game number 2. I think it's much more about a team strategy, not just Aror being nice to the guy filling in. But I feel like Aror would protect me in a real-life battle situation.
It depends. How useful are you? What are you contributing to the team fight? I think that's where you'll get your answer, because I've seen Aror abandon some people before, man. Trust me, those rank games can get brutal.
That's fair.
If you're on Auror's team, he's a one-man carry machine oftentimes, and
He wins those games.
he does. Unfortunately, I've learned that the hard way one time too many, but
Hindu has said more times than I can count that Aror is one of people's least favorite players to run up in rank.
It's Aror and Neil. They're like the 2 worst, and of course they're support players.
Of course.
Of course they're just there to try and make you feel miserable.
Neil's there playing Thanatos support,
No, he's got Scotty.
stealing your speed buff at level 1.
Always something crazy going down, that's for sure, when these 2 mental geniuses come into play.
Aror shows up with his Jormungandr support. Day 1 he's available, and you're sitting there like, great, I have a troll in my game. And he goes 12-0 and 12, and you're just mad about it.
That's usually the case.
Yeah. Aurora's been able to have this presence for a while. It's always been his play style, even going back to the the historic depth days of season 1, etc. Fat chunks assemble. He's always been the aggro tank. Vote getting aggressed on here. Adapting can help. CycloneSpin rides the horse and is bad with the shot. Aror dealing damage to Adapting, who's going to get not knocked up because of the beads. Knock him on a Vote. Aror going for it. Will miss the 3rd shot. CycloneSpin dashes. Won't find it with the Eagle Eye, but here comes Zyrhoes.
Could be trouble now with Zyrhoes trying to give chase, but Zyrhoes having already utilized the flicker. Has to keep in mind that Scream's on his purple buff right now, and Scream successfully invading, even with the EmilZy's best attempts there to try and catch that buff confirmation with the disarm, but it's just not going to be enough for now. A solid rotation, though, by Pittsburgh Knights to prevent the full dive opportunity there from Splyce, because Aror, the second that he charged into that tower, the fact that Cyclone had 0 hesitation to follow up on that means that Splyce were fully ready to commit.
All in. All in. And I think that's a requirement to be on Splyce's team, is your ability to commit to the team fight has to be under a second. Because they do that a lot. They all of a sudden just, oh, we got it. And you know Aror. That's how those calls are made. Oh, I got him! And then you all jump in. So Splyce, the reaction time, never something I'm going to question.
This is definitely pretty tricky right now, though, for Pittsburgh Knights, because Deathwalker's had to spend so much time just dealing with Cabom, who won't let him leave his lane, and is just following him everywhere. And Deathwalker's been able to build leads. It's no real surprise, honestly, when you see the Warrior into the Kuzumbo matchup, you expect the Warrior to have the level advantage, but even with that level gap taking place, because Cabom is still on a Guardian, he still has so much disrupt potential against Pittsburgh Knights' carries, and breaking down the entirety of Splyce's composition. Oftentimes what they're probably planning on doing is just utilizing either Cabom or Aror. One or the other is going to be initiation, the other is going to be intended for like peel and possibly some dive.
Pyromancer goes down to the other side of the map. Adapting Invoker here, but it's not enough to take the Gold Fury. That'll, well, keep Splyce in the bottom, but shorten the distance. Pittsburgh Knights had amassed a decent lead, and Splyce will cut that to about 2,500. There's another tower, so it'll go back down to 3K. And Pittsburgh Knights have been slowly amassing this lead by just prowess in the jungle.
Scream's got to be careful, though. Might have bit off a little bit more than he could chew. Tried to stand up in the face of 5 different members of Pittsburgh Knights, but they are just forcing this T2 tower. Will finally be able to bring it down. Now the punish might come through from the rest of Splyce.
I think the punish is going to go onto the rest of Splyce. Cabom surrounded and pounded as Vote puts him in the ground. 3 kills in total for Pittsburgh Knights as they start to bite back. Game number 1 was but a setback, and Pittsburgh looking for the goal.
Splyce took just a little bit too long to reset after forcing that Fury away from Pittsburgh Knights. And now they'll pay the price for sure. Losing those T1 and T2 towers in mid lane, it's not only a nice payday for Pittsburgh Knights, but a huge opening of map pressure that PK can now try to play off of. Adapting beforehand, I don't think could really take too much of a look into Scream's jungle without having fear of punish, but when there's no towers to really interfere with your pathway, then Adapting can very likely look for better opportunities to try and catch Venenu or Scream off guard.
It's a really big deal there, though, watching Adapting kind of be relegated to the outside of the combat. Adapting is usually a big part of the driving force of what Pittsburgh Knights are able to do, and Splyce keeping him out of the conversation has been a nice look as far as letting this game get out of hand. Because Pittsburgh have a 5,000 gold lead, which is the largest lead they've had all game. They've been stuck at about 2,000 to 3,000, so to speak. And looking at that big jump, now I think Adapting can start to finally do it, because before, Splyce were treading water is the term I used before for Cabom specifically. The whole team was treading water here, trying to keep Adapting at bay.
Something kind of interesting, though, between these two teams is that I feel like Pittsburgh Knights has an easier time forcing Aegis relics from Splyce in comparison to Splyce, where I think they'll have a significantly easier time forcing the beads. So it's been really fun sitting back watching these team fights from the overhead view, because you can just tell that both sides want to be more aggressive, but both sides also have such a good understanding of what the other can do to them that they're still playing with some, I think, respect for that damage that the other can provide.
Gotta watch out for the Fire Giant as well. Pittsburgh Knights starting this one up. Merlin very adept at shredding objectives. It's been a while since we've seen him, so I will note that one. DW brought down to half HP as Cabom gets blown up and taken down. Zyrhoes, great placement of the Arcane. When you talk about characters that need to know the environment really well, you look at Ho Yi, Merlin's one of them. Gotta use these tight corridors to really make use of that Arcane stance.
Really nice taunt in from Scream there off the Erlang ultimate. Catches EmilZy and Adapting, but no one else behind Scream. No real follow-up for a punish, and Pittsburgh Knights are going to be relatively unscathed. Now Zyrhoes, I think, kind of beckoning for the rest of Pittsburgh Knights to back them up with this Fire Giant pull. Whenever there's a Merlin on the board and a Jingwei with crit, these objectives are not safe.
Aror coming to knock him out. Then the Fire Giant will be reset. Deathwalker uses the ultimate and misses with the damage. Splyce, on the other hand, return it. DW stays away from the team. Great job there, but it's a retreat from Splyce, even though they push Pittsburgh off of the objective.
But Splyce have bought just enough time for Cabom to respawn, so while Aror heads back to base, Cabom's the one who immediately takes over. Frenzy has been popped though. Pittsburgh Knights looking like they want to commit here. EmilZy going to fall relatively low. Thorns having been popped from Cabom as well, and a nice watery grade to push everybody outside of that Fire Giant pit.
EmilZy's back in the base, Zyrhoes is back in the base, Vote is back in the base. If Splyce knew all of these backs were happening, they might try to rush with a frenzy of their own. But I think Pittsburgh Knights backed kind of successfully there.
It's scary.
It's
for
scary,
Splyce.
but I mean, Splyce, I mean, you look at Hachimon and Scream.
I don't compare the burst.
Cabom's low damage. Yeah, I don't think you'd be able to get it. It would be tight, though, with the Frenzy. But the Primal Fury, I think, is going to be a little bit more focused.
Adapting now, trying to punish Scream, gets taunted back in. Aror also going to find the knockup to completely force the disengage here. And Pittsburgh Knights, they were looking for a heads-up play onto Scream, instead going to get cut off from that opportunity.
25% left of the Primal Fury. That's all Pittsburgh, baby. Aror in some trouble. And Deathwalker will get number 5 here for the Knights. The black and yellow will cross the street and start looking towards the Fire Giant.
This Merlin damage is starting to become a serious problem now for Splyce because their tanks are just not looking tanky at all as soon as Zyrhoes throws out the Ice Storm. Even the Arcane Stance and Fire, so many different tools at Merlin's disposal here that Zyrhoes is getting full effect from. And I'm just not sure that Splyce really feel all that confident in trying to prevent Pittsburgh Knights from taking the Fire Giant anymore.
Yeah.
If anything, I actually think Splyce is a really solid base defense style of play that they could try and lean more towards.
Could be. Kuzenbo does a decent job. Watery Grave really locks players into that Phoenix and can do a great job of making sure that they take extra shots that they weren't planning on. Scream's got a giant taunt into a Strife from Venenu, which is always wonderful. The ability to clear the wave comes out a little bit. Left side, a little bit more action. The adapting shows up. Vote as well, but the damage output from Splyce a little bit too high. CycloneSpin with a little bit of a crit. The Rage before the Executioner. We're so used to seeing Boots, Devos trans, right? Boots, Devos into EmilZy. This season we've seen something different though. Sometimes Odie, sometimes Rage.
There's a couple of variations. There's the Aussie, Odysseus Bow, Rage, Executioner. Yep. They've all been kind of taking their turn cycling through in Hunter builds. And again, everything is really match dependent and enemy team composition based for as to what dictates how a Hunter likes to build. And here for Cyclone, I think he just goes for the third item Rage because he can afford to. Looking at Pittsburgh Knights, no one to really eat those shots. Just like Aurora's eating a ton of shots from Pittsburgh Knights, not even gonna get a chance to go into that ultimate.
That's a really good ultimate for objective contest. And so with that down and Cabom's Watery Grave down, the hard way I might add, the kill way, I should confirm. Splyce will look towards the Fire Giant. CycloneSpin is pushing down the left side lane. With that sound confirming the kill. CycloneSpin not willing to go all the way to the Phoenix, but a tier 2 on the left side goes down. A tier 1 in the mid lane go down. So Splyce do not give the Fire Giant up for free, but they also don't give it up unpunished. 1 death already, and Scream will get out. So Venenu, the only post-Fire Giant death here for Splyce.
But Scream just barely managing to get away there. He's had a lot of issues as well with this Erlang, trying to not have his ultimate interrupted. There's a little bit of a wind-up charge there when he first tries to pop that 9-turn blessing, and it's just not enough to prevent Venenu from taking an early spill here. But good news for Splyce, Venenu, only level 17, isn't going to have to sit out for very long here. Will be back in action in time for the base defense. But Pittsburgh Knights seem as though they'd much rather take care of all these towers first.
They're just going through and doing, you know, the necessary kind of cleanup that you've got to look for. Now with the only towers left are the left side, Pittsburgh Knights will clear out this duo lane. Zyrhoes, Vote, and Deathwalker all grouped up here on the left side of the map already. Fafnir trailing a little bit behind, and then Pele adapting in the jungle. creeping up in the mid lane while pushing it simultaneously. So tier 1 tower goes down without a story, and the tier 2 tower will go down just as simplistically. So with that in mind, Pittsburgh Knights have an absurd lead, 10,000 gold, 8 kills above 2, and looking to push onto the left side burn. EmilZy leads the charge, getting the stun onto Cabom. Takes a couple of shots, not too big of a deal. EmilZy begging Splyce. Fully engaged, not going to be the case. PK back off.
No way that Splyce leave this Phoenix area of safety. It's like the only safety net Splyce really have to fall back on right now, but Pittsburgh Knights have just been evaporating this front line, not giving Aror or Cabom any space to really work in. Venenu
Oh,
going to
big
get some
play.
sick damage out on the Vote, and now Vote could be toast.
Cabom goes into the spin, but he won't win. Vote finds an exit out on the backside. EmilZy, on the other hand, dealing with some of the carries while adapting, goes into Scream. You've taunted the monster! The kickball won't do it. Pin will be avoided. And Cabom watches as Pele walks away.
But look at these Phoenixes. They're all perfectly healthy.
Exactly.
That could change within the next couple of minutes here
But
now.
you said it before. This is a comp.
They're still holding on, though, and Venenu, he's going to be the real star maker of the hour. Frenzies haven't been popped both ways. Deathwalker deep into the back line, and EmilZy just blows up Aror in an instant.
Meanwhile, the left side Phoenix goes down as well. Vote half HP, but Cyclone none of it. 2 dead already on the side of Splyce. Cabom could be number 3. Deathwalker with the sickle takes him down. And just like that, Pittsburgh Knights, we've told this story a lot. You can't make these guys mad. Game 2 in the direction of Pittsburgh Knights.
No more messing around, it seems, but I don't think they were messing around in Game 1 either, Tom. And that Game 2 close, still a little bit closer than what Pittsburgh Knights probably were aiming for.
It's weird, and it's something that competitors understand. You can play your best and still have an extra gear. Pittsburgh Knights weren't trolling or anything, zero, none of that. They played their best in game number 1 and got beat. Then they put it into that extra gear that all competitors know all too well. I've been saying it since season 2. You can't piss off adapting. This guy will just beat you. And honestly, Pele wasn't even front and center. Pittsburgh Knights as a unit just got mad.
That game for me was all Zyrhoes.
Yeah.
I think that Zyrhoes placement oftentimes with the Merlin abilities was just such an excellent restriction against Splyce. They didn't really seem to have a response for it because either Cabom or Aror was just dying way too fast for Splyce to really have anything to respond with.
Well, the clean stuff was here from Pittsburgh this time around. Tied at 1. Let's go to the desk.
Another good game between these two teams, except for this one ends up going in favor of the Knights. And before we came into this one, who did we highlight? It was those junglers, Screammmmm adapting. And that's who stepped up here in this game. Adapting in particular, man, on this Pele looked great.
But you also got to give credit to Scream, the level 1 gank that he did, or level 2, I guess, at that purple buff invade, where Vote was looking to play aggressive, stripping away CycloneSpin's farm. A good presence from him. It just wasn't enough once adapting did come online on the Pele.
Yeah, adapting was the one who really made his impact felt here in this game. And now it's starting to look a little bit like we expected to, I feel like, here in this set. Splyce were ahead in kills, like at that 2-to-1 mark for a little while, but they weren't able to keep it at that point. Eventually, the Knights were able to start applying some pressure onto them. And for me, in the early game, it was really them playing around the solo lane, pushing up into the enemy jungle so often around Deathwalker in particular on this aggressive Osiris that they picked for him. And I don't think Splyce were able to respond to that pressure enough.
And despite not killing Cabom, the Deathwalker Osiris had a 3-level lead consistently throughout the game. Level 11 Cabom versus level 14 Deathwalker, invading so many of those back camps, occasionally the blue buff from time to time, having a 7-to-1 advantage at the Totem of Coup, and PK was still up ahead in gold, despite Splyce being the ones to strike first at the Gold Fury.
That's right. I mean, it's because the Knights were doing a better job controlling the jungle, it felt like. Even like you said, without it really always resulting directly in more and more kills. But one more thing that helps you do well is things like this. When adapting is able to play the Pele at such a high level, it kind of able to limit Scream and his effectiveness.
But that last play was definitely highlighted by Deathwalker's presence on the Osiris. Just like we thought that the Osiris was going to be able to limit what Jormungandr was going to do by going into stealth, it's the same idea against Discordia, using her own fog, trying to elude combat.
Let's take a look at these post-game stats here. Anatoly adapting 4-1-6. No big surprise that he was able to have a really good game. This time the Knights take away the Merlin away from Venenu, relegate him down to playing on the Discordia. That limited him as well. CycloneSpin not on the Chernobog this time. The Hachiman doesn't quite work as well for them. Now Splyce might be in a bit of a tough spot in these picks and bans because it does seem like they kind of have to prioritize this Kuzenbo for Cabom a little bit, and that might be hurting them.
And Splyce kind of got baited out, thinking that PK was going to draft the Jormungandr, leave Merlin open for Venenu, and allow the same idea of the Merlin plus Hercules combination. But this time around, with Jormungandr for Aror, he didn't have the same impact as he did on the Hercules. He wasn't looking for those pulls pushes. He did make some good plays. He forced the beats out of adapting, and I believe an Aegis out of Vote during that Tier 1 tower dive. But not to the same impact as the Hercules. I think that they need to figure out how he can draft the Hercules this next game.
I was a bit surprised, too, that they passed on the Jormungandr like you were talking about. I mean, the Knights, I thought they highly valued and wanted for Zyrhoes. If it was open, they'll get it for him. But he was willing to pass on it for this Merlin. And like you said, it really did kind of open up those picks and bans to the Knights in a pretty big way. So the question now, because they're Splyce, do they have to, like you say, prioritize getting maybe the Hercules for Aurora, or getting the Kuzenbo, or can they afford to pass in those things and maybe try one more step down in Gods? They have some time. It's 1-1, a best of 3 now to try and figure it out.
Well, they were banning the Chronos Mercury beforehand, so now they're going to look at this next game with picks and bans and figure out, like, okay, if Merlin's open and we're not the ones that being first pick, we got to ban it away, because that was too good of a performance out of Zyrhoes. There's too much space control, especially when you have an Osiris diving you on top of a Pele.
And maybe that's the idea. Now that they've lost, maybe you just pick first pick in this one, right? And you don't have to make nearly as tough of a decision about what you ban in that second spot. You can force that decision on the Dig, or excuse me, onto the Knights, and make them be the ones that have to try and decide what they're banning out here in that second spot.
Well, not going to the script this time around, as it is a split series. No reverse sweep this time around. We're going into a game 3.
Despite how we wrote it, the players just did their own thing. So apparently, you do have to go actually play those games out, it turns out. Splyce will be in the first pick this time. Maybe that makes things easier as they ban Chrono.
Failed RP between these two teams, honestly. But I like this idea, though. Take away the 2 magical hunters. That's been the consistent game plan between games 1 and 2. But Splyce still banning away the Mercury. But this time around, they are first pick, as opposed to last game being on the Chaos side.
Yep, so now the Knights are the ones who are very likely then, I imagine, ban the Merlin. And then Splyce now decide, is it worth going back to the Jormungandr? I don't think Aror played it too bad. There were a bunch of times where he pulled out several relics with that ultimate.
Yes.
Beads and Aegises and the likes. But I just don't know if that is enough for them. Maybe they'll go to Hercules right away or something like that.
It could be interesting, but I don't expect PK to take Hercules away, even if Splyce draft the Jormungandr. It doesn't really fit their style. It's like more of like an Aror, like a Neil Ma kind of pick, not necessarily an EmilZy style. And I doubt we're going to see the Hercules out of Deathwalker.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like the kind of thing Deathwalker wants, especially with Osiris out there and still doing well. He could pick that for himself. You know, it hasn't been prioritized too much so far has been the King Arthur. We haven't had to worry about him.
Yeah.
That guy always is floating around. I don't think you have to grab him nearly as often as before, but he always is still potent.
There's just so many picks in the Soul Lane that King Arthur, you know, can go up and down in value, and something that both of these teams are, you know, Splyce definitely benefiting from. PK might be regretting this. This definitely changes what Zyrhoes is going to try to bring in that mid lane. He can't really play more of this mid to late game focus. He's going to need to try to match the push power of a Moose and Cobb, or else they're going to lose all their buffs.
I mean, this might even change what adapting can play, right? You can't let this Amuse and Cobb go unchecked wherever it goes. This feels a bit like it's leaning towards Van in the mid lane for me. Amuse and Cobb does really well there, but CycloneSpin could definitely still play it. Wherever it is, I don't think you can allow this pick to just free farm, because once Amuse and Cobb gets late, he's so difficult to deal with. He has so much burn, you can't even afford to dive him anymore. So maybe this dictates a lot of what the Knights do.
And because of how high mobility he has, you need to find ways to lock him down. The best way to do it is through walls, whether it's Thor, Kabrakin, Anhur, Odin potentially. Haven't really seen any Odin at all in Season 6, despite some rise of potential healers.
Looks like they're considering the Jormungandr and the Erlong Shen. The Erlong makes sense to me as a ban here in this situation, because the Splyce have really relied on this pick. They'll give it to Scream if it's available. He's had it both times so far, so take this from him. You talked about how strong his early game was on this pick last game, and he certainly likes it. So Jorm, Erlong Shen, I assume the mid-jungle for the team.
It's definitely the mid Jormungandr, but the Erlang Shen, I'm not sold that's going for adapting. Because that could also be for EmilZy, also for Deathwalker, and knowing how PK is the second pick, they can see the full draft out of Splyce before they really fully commit onto Deathwalker's pick, especially if they look for a different kind of support style.
Now, Splyce had to decide where they want to go. They can go ahead and get the Hercules here now in this one, along with maybe the likes of a Jingwei if they want to get both their hunters and take that one away. Looks like it will indeed be the idea to go for the Jingwei, but not the Hercules. Aurora going to be on the Fafnir this time, the clear double hunter synergy.
Yeah, this is what you really want to get right now if you're looking to focus out objectives. Get the belt or get the Frenzy Relic, being able to burn that down very quickly, getting extra attack speed, increased damage, increased penetration if you upgrade that relic. Jingwei benefiting from attack speed, as does the EmilZy. So a great synergy between these two hunters.
Yes, very much so, and you have a good balance between them too, because EmilZy can be a bit of a bully early on if it's in the right spot. You know, if you put him in the middle lane, which very likely he will be now that they already have the Jingwei, and then the Jingwei can build in some crit late game, or can do attack speed just as well. I mean, this feels really good from Splyce so far, but Osiris, not a bad answer at all. That does make me think now that that is the Jormungandr for Zyrhoes for sure. Erlang Shen in the jungle, Osiris then for Deathwalker.
There needs to be ways to deal with these hunters. So you're looking at solo lane anti-hunter picks. I'm thinking either Osiris, Erlang Shen, or Bologna. Well, you already got the Erlang. You add an Osiris there, you're going to be able to get that 16% physical mitigation off of your passive, and then also the Judgment Tether to limit a lot of the damage output between EmilZy and Jingwei. Also, Osiris benefits from building into physical defense depending on what Cabom is going to go.
Oh, but that is going to be the question now with this Kuzenbo banned away. Where is Cabom going to go? I mean, that is the thread that we've been following so much throughout this picks and ban phase, is that they've had to prioritize it for him because we aren't so sure if Cabom can confidently play something else. I trust that they've been able to practice with multiple things in case this was taken from him, but I've liked how he's looked in the Kuzenbo. I wonder where he'll go next.
Yeah, without the Kuzenbo, he's going to try to maybe play something not as execution heavy, but yet again in games 1 and 2, he still went for the blink at level 1. So maybe this is why he's kind of falling behind in the level department. He's getting bullied out a little bit too much, having to go back to base. He needs to figure out a way of staying on the same pace of Deathwalker so that way he can keep up with the rotations.
The two magical hunters have been banned away, and as well as Hachiman and Turnabog, Jingwei picked for Splyce. That really narrows down the options for Vote. The thing is, Vote's happy to pick something up, like you said, like an On Her or something like that. He's willing to pick someone who can lean a little bit ability focused and just look to battle early on. If it is against the Jingwei, you might not be able to do as much at your early pressure, but Vote still likes to pick it.
There's Uller, On Her, Medusa, Chiron. Like, those are the remaining ability hunters outside of the Moose and Cobb, and Vote could definitely play those to great success. Zyrhoes probably playing this Jormungandr pick, so still need like EmilZy's pick and maybe adapting, because that Erlang Shen can flex.
Could you see a Rom? All right.
You're like 2 for 2 there. Like Discordia last game, and now Rom again. You want to take this?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't want to press my luck. The all-new whammy. Ow, Kwong. That is a bit surprising if this one comes through. I mean, he's a hyper carry in his own right.
Yes. And when you have a Muzenkab and Jingwei, 2 physical hunters, you're going to need to lean on magical damage.
Right.
And if you're going to try to lean on the solo lane magical damage, you're going to need the likes of maybe Ymir. Like, I'm thinking of high bursty Guardians. Ymir, Kabrakan, something along those lines to deal the magical damage. So I would rather have a jungler magical source damage dealer.
Well, looks like they are going to move away from that a little bit, having some fun with us. Now they're taking a look at the Athena. I wonder if they are planning on going with this triple Guardian double Hunter comp. Remember, this worked really well for, what was it, Season 4 Elevate, I think, right? Yeah, that ran this one throughout the gauntlet, even into Worlds, and it was really strong.
That whole Death Panther, that whole roster really relied on that strategy, but still thinking about it a little bit longer, and it would be a good way to protect your backline hyper carries. If you can get off to a great start making the plays around the Gold Fury. That was the reason that Elevate had so much success, that got them to Worlds, that actually shut down Zyrhoes' opportunity in Season 4
Right.
of making Worlds.
Well, it's going to be Nemesis and Artio that come through. So neither one of what they've kind of been hovering on is what they ended up picking. The Nemesis is very interesting. We do not see a lot of her anymore, but this is something Scream throughout his career has actually played a lot of, even if we haven't seen much lately. So certainly comfortable. And then the Artio for Cabom.
Normally, whenever you see a Nemesis, it's paired up with something that could play either cleanup or a high enough burst where Nemesis can clean up after the fact. I'm not really seeing that too much out of Splyce quite yet. Like, between Nemesis and Rom, Nemesis Jormungandr, Nemesis Nuwa, right? Like, you have that backline penetration because you have to be so patient as a Nemesis whenever you're playing cleanup, because the only way you're starting a fight is with Divine Judgment. You really don't want to get into
Right.
the thick of things right off the bat.
But I'm just worried this team might be too reliant on slows from Splyce. I mean, the Moose and Cobb get so much work out of it. Nemesis is almost entirely reliant on those. And especially now this Capri's been picked up for the Knights, even if you do get those slows to stick on someone, they can just res them.
It's going to be an interesting one. I like PK's draft because they have a good mix of offense and defense. I love the Capri pick. It's rising in popularity in Season 6. PK to win this one.
I think PK has a really good chance to go up 2-1 here in this set. I'm right there with it, but you can never count out Splyce. Let's get this back over to Tom and Taco.
Thanks a lot, boys. Desk doing well as always. Both of these teams doing well. Splyce kind of taking a step back here in game number 2. For game number 3, though, I like a lot of these choices. Screams on an old school Nemesis pick. I like a lot for the Big S.
A little bit scary, though, for Splyce, looking at that Kepri selection here from Pittsburgh Knights. I definitely think that the Scare's Blessing could potentially shut down a lot of what Nemesis is probably aiming to do. And Nem, when she's trying to go for the isolation picks off of her ultimate, can really struggle if she's having to be delayed by that Kepri ult.
Certainly got to look out for kind of everything. So you're looking out for the Kepri ult as far as how long will the team fight go. You're looking out for everything on the front side as well. Zyrhoes in the beginning of the team fight, is what you're going to look for. EmilZy at the end of the team fight is what you got to look for. There's a lot going on here for Splyce that they've got to watch out.
And I'm sure that Pittsburgh Knights are probably still treading lightly, considering how Game 1 went down. It stings, I think, especially for the Pittsburgh Knights to have lost a game like that to Splyce. It's really just because of the fact that Splyce have a sub, though. I think Pittsburgh Knights, if it was a full Splyce roster, you know, you don't really get too upset or frazzled about dropping Game 1 here, but Cabom is a fill-in while he's done a fantastic job so far. I don't think that it's necessarily the same as a regular pro player there in that solo lane role. And PK, we talk about him all the time because this is a team that holds themselves to what some might even consider unreasonably high standards.
Every game's got to be a win, and it can't be close. That is absolutely what these guys think. Like I said, I mean, I've known Kenneth for a long time, and that winning attitude is, you know, it's one of those attitudes that like can rub some people the wrong way. Me working in competition, I love to see it. You know, he can be aggressive, he can be all straight up hard to deal with, but he also is a 2-time world champion and multiple best player of the year. Like that's how you get there, man. So I respect it. It's abrasive, it's gruff, it absolutely is. But I'm here for it. And I think it makes Pittsburgh Knights, it's another part of what makes Pittsburgh Knights so tough to deal with.
Well, Pittsburgh Knights also know what they're capable of, and right now they're definitely handing it to Splyce over here in solo. Scream gonna start making the rotation inwards on this Nemesis just to try and alleviate some of the pressure, or at least make sure Cabom doesn't go without a blue buff for much longer here. But Cabom only level 1. Fortunately, as RDO, shapeshifters have more than just one ability at the start. But the pressure is definitely on right now for Aror and Cabom. They are struggling to keep up, I think, with some of PK's aggression there.
You're going to go a different selection here instead of the Kuzenbo, right? A lot of times substitutes will just play a single god and kind of lean on it. Cabom here bringing up the RDO, very exciting. It should work well against the animals from adapting. Cripple Field will obviously hurt with respects to EmilZy and Vote, trying to get out of trouble as well. So I'm eager to see what'll happen here. And like we said earlier, with respects to Cabom, obviously maybe behind a little bit in lane, but when it comes time to team fight, he'll do well. He'll do his job, and that's what RDO does.
I
Team
think
fight.
my primary issue, though, is the fact that even with Scream rotating over to strip away Deathwalker's blue buff, the fact that Cabom doesn't have mana sustain because he got zoned away from approaching PK's blue buff area to try and pick it up for himself. Now Deathwalker, I think, can have full control. But it is a little unfortunate as well for Deathwalker, but since he's Osiris and relying more on the in-hands than on the Spirit Flail or the Sickle, that's why it's so problematic right now for Cabom.
Exactly. If I'm sitting on the side of Pittsburgh Knights, Deathwalker here, do you think, I mean, we'll see how the lane goes, but in general, he's going to be aggressive. We just want to see, I want to see kind of what flavor aggression he goes, if you will. If he's going to be here in lane looking to push down Cabom, or if he's able to rotate and make an impact elsewhere. Because Deathwalker on the Osiris, certainly a force to be reckoned with.
One more time, though. DW already looking to revisit Cabom's blue buff Scream. Having been in position already to try and play defense, Aror's going to start meandering his way inwards as well now. But EmilZy, it's a 3v3, except Cabom is not healthy enough to really join the fray.
Scream's going to blink in. Dash is caught. Nemesis has 2. No big deal. But the blue buff again gets taken away.
Heads up stun, though, from Aror. Instantly tosses out the Fafnir Hammer once he sees EmilZy clutch up his jungler. And possibly might have even saved Scream's life if EmilZy had actually held on to him long enough to prevent the Nemesis from having that secondary dash available. Then maybe we see a PK first blood, but as it currently stands, Splyce are really only out a blue buff.
And that's, I mean, we covered it, right? Cabom without the blue is going to be an issue, but we'll see just how big of an issue it gets when we actually see some rotations. In the jungle, I mentioned the old school Nemesis pick. This is old school for Scream. It's one of his original go-tos. It's an old school character. Usually we see it very specifically with respects to dealing with full tank lineups, tank jungles. Shout out to Jean-Qui as well. What makes Nemesis so attractive here for Scream?
Well, it's a full tank lineup minus Vote on that ROM. Vote, I think, intended to bring a lot of that hyper carry DPS factor as this game transitions from early to mid to late. And I also think that adapting is a little bit more flexible in this position because he's got Deathwalker on the Osiris. Adapting doesn't necessarily have to build into another tanky member, even though the Erlong is certainly a possibility. So the fact that Pittsburgh Knights could potentially threaten Splyce with a full tank lineup is going to be the main reason why we see Scream kind of have to default into the Nemesis. There really aren't too many other junglers that I think could have handled this composition that PK have opted for very well.
Gotta love to have Nemesis showing up. Real simple character sometimes. I've always been a fan of Nemesis. I think she's interesting. And I want to see which way Scream builds her. Boots into Jotun's Wrath is usually a go-to. Scream! Oh no. Close.
Tried it.
It looked hot. It looked hot.
It's the second time now.
Yeah.
Third time going to be a little bit more risky because EmilZy's probably going to start to suspect that a blink will follow for an attempt at a blue buff defense there. It's been solid effort from Scream trying to help out his solo laner. Unfortunately, it's just not enough right now. I think if anything, Splyce should start prioritizing some aggression over into duo because Cabom here could be in a whole world of trouble now. Adapting's made his way over. 9 turns Blessing just to make sure that Cabom can't escape. Lord of the Afterlife might have been a little bit of overkill there from Deathwalker, but
no.
Job still done. Adapting gets the kill.
No overkill there. That is Pittsburgh Knights going, what up, substitute? And just putting him down.
Just take his lunch money.
I mean, yeah, that's, listen. We've celebrated Cabom. He even won a game. That's good for him. But it is good strategy to beat up the substitute. Normally, the substitute is coming from an outside, like, not Cabom being coach, right, still has that level of synergy. I would expect there to be a level of synergy very much there for them. But beyond that, right, Cabom still isn't what Splyce are used to. Beat up the sub. That is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to beat up the sub.
Man, that patience from Vote, by the way, to not want to step up to the lane. And hey, I'm not going to disagree with you. I definitely think that Pittsburgh Knights are being very direct in their efforts to shut down Cabom early on.
Which they didn't really do in games 1 and 2.
Well, game 2, I think it was there.
Okay.
A little bit more so. Game 1, I don't think that Pittsburgh Knights were really paying much attention towards that Kuzma because Deathwalker had a massive lead over him.
Yeah.
Why would we invest resources as a team
You're right.
towards the lane that's already 3 to 4 levels behind? That's not value for adapting to gank into, but this experience on the blue buff being never ending is starting to become problematic now for the rest of Splyce because Pittsburgh Knights are just slowly but surely building up into an experience league.
Gold lead as well, 2,000 up, and only 500 of that is going to be by way of first blood. So a decent amount here from Splyce. Nice job already. Or excuse me, from Pittsburgh Knights, a nice job already taking advantage of what Splyce hasn't been able to do, which is defend their buffs.
By the way, I also don't think we've put enough relevance into this just yet either, but Vote bringing back the ROM, something we haven't seen in a really long time.
Yeah, we saw Arco play it the other day, and outside of that, just hasn't really been available. You know what it is? I think that people want a lot of safety and
Buff secure.
buff secure. Also, ROM just seems no utility. Even character like EmilZy, which is all damage, as EmilZy gets jumped on, bees are good, but he ults himself, and EmilZy will be fine. AMC is largely damaged. Even he has a slow, a cripple. ROM has literally a slow and cripple. But it's a little bit harder to kind of add up to. You know what I'm saying. ROM is a straight hunter, and I think that the stomachization of that is a little bit less available.
Trouble now for Venenu, though, as the World Worm has been activated. Venenu still trying to get away, but won't be able to escape the likes of adapting there in the mid lane. Spot weakness. Just going to help out too much so on those in-hands.
So that's my take. I think that ROM provides the damage and can be played, but the reason we see people shy away from it is just lack of anything else. Why do you think that we rarely see the ROM?
He just does not have early game presence, and it is really tough getting him to survive.
I thought
He clears the lane level 1 and that's it.
Okay.
But then you don't have a way to confirm your purple buff. It's very risky, I think, to try and take ROM, especially with some of the more popular Hunter matchups currently, like Freya, Kronos, Jingwei, all pretty favorable matchups against the ROM, believe it or not.
he's doing all right so far. We'll see if that's going to continue to be the case. Pittsburgh Knights, I mean, this dual lane has been left alone largely, so that might also be the reasoning.
It's also kind of tough for Scream in this position because Scream's already made an attempt to try and gank Vote once, but Vote kind of knew something was up, chose to just stay leaning against that. Or he hugged the wall, pretty much the far side wall in dual lane to prevent Scream from having an opportunity to gank him in the jungle. But even if Scream does show face and try to attack Vote, if Vote is able to get off the Astral Barrage in time, he is up in the air for so long. That is ample time for Pittsburgh Knights to, at the very least, get 2 members, ideally 3, in for a counter rotation. And Zyrhoes alone, I mean, he can cover half the map, it feels like, at times on the Jormungandr when you invest into the ultimate. So it's just kind of tough for Splyce to get the ball rolling early on, and Pittsburgh Knights know it, so they're full on abusing that aspect. They're leaving Deathwalker alone to proxy. They're stripping out every single little bit of farm that Scream could possibly find to force him into splitting waves more often, and it's just a slow starvation of the map from Splyce.
We saw that a little bit in game number 2 as well. Pittsburgh Knights here continuing in game number 3. EmilZy jumped on, but didn't really care. Roar transforms and will have to walk away with his hands in his pockets. The vision of the gold screen gets denied, split down the middle, and so have to be good old-fashioned wards.
Venenu trying to do what he can as well to recover here, but closing that experience gap's going to prove to be a lot tougher than the earlier matches because Zyrhoes just does not look like he's slowing down anytime soon here. Deathwalker still going to continue to be successful. Lord of the Afterlife over the blue buff wall just to try and get away, and now with that cutoff, might be able to TP out of here.
Oh, they got the stun. The TP is canceled, and Scream gets the last hit. Nice job.
got the job done.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I don't think that Deathwalker was expecting that type of punish off the Divine Judgment.
He definitely was not ready for that level of commitment at all. You can always tell the last-ditch effort to try and teleport out. It's funny because it is a reasonable expectation that you might be able to get out, but also it just looks so funny. You're like, all right, here I am, guys. I'm going to teleport 4 seconds. Remember when that was 3 seconds?
It used to be really fast.
Was it ever?
Remember when
No,
you
I think it
could
was-
buy it for 150 gold?
Yeah.
And you could teleport anywhere?
Was that?
You remember the Bastet TP trick? That was
wasn't-
always fun.
That was because consumable teleport,
That was, I really want to say season 2. Really badly want to say season 2.
because they
but might
brought
have
it
been
back
3.
for rituals, but it was once upon a time also just a consumable.
Just a
teleport.
consumable for 150 gold. And that was
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
I think they pushed it up to 300 at some point because, I mean, it was silly. But then they realized that teleporting to solo lane is just the crutch players need, so they just gave it to everybody as a relic. Get it at level 1, teleport back. Which, admittedly, I've never lost a lane in my life, but if I had, losing your tower at 9 minutes would be really obnoxious, I guess. Deathwalker going all in here. I didn't think he was going to get the kill on Cabom. This is a different story. It's going to be a stun. Cabom can't find the distance. The tower just going for it. Cabom's sitting there like, what do I do? And Taco, I'll straight up ask you, what does he do there?
There's nothing you can do sometimes.
Do you run
That's-
to your tier 2? Like, realistically, how do you survive?
Cabom did everything in his power to try and create some space. The RDO dash charge, though, just isn't fast enough to get away from that Osiris once he's got that sickle and tether out on you. All those slows just getting the better end of Cabom in the end.
Wow.
And even with some well-timed mezzes, unfortunately for Cabom, Deathwalker's underneath the tower taking shots, so that's almost immediately interrupted every single time. Damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. This
For
is
real.
just Cabom being at the mercy of Deathwalker's aggression.
Mid lane, Auror's going to be at the mercy of Pittsburgh's aggression. And mercy there will be. A retreat. Venenu and Scream a little bit too much of a threat.
Yeah, Cabom's calling favoritism on that play. All right. If that was Deathwalker, you know my man isn't back down there.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. Man.
God, this bear just got its
Yeah.
beat. Just got beat.
Poor. I mean, they're in the middle of the lane. Cabom's just doing, or excuse me, Deathwalker's just doing Osiris stuff. I'm not. That was, you know.
But Deathwalker's level 15.
It's absurd that he's
so
level 15.
is Vote. Vote is level 16. Cyclone 16 as well. But everybody else on Splyce so much further behind Pittsburgh
Splyce have
Knight's
vision.
front line.
Splyce have vision in this Gold Fury. Pittsburgh doesn't care. 10% to go. That's it. Scream shows up. It's a little bit too late. Pin off the mark as well. So Pittsburgh Knights just decide to take the gold, and they'll do just that. 4,000 gold in the lead now. Maybe even more so. Almost 5.
Possible beginning of the end is what it's starting to seem more and more like when dealing with the Pittsburgh Knights here in Game 3. Splyce, I think, have done a decent job, though, at preventing the bleeding. But there's only so much that they can stop, Tom, before they just get overwhelmed. And that's exactly why Pittsburgh Knights just continue to run at Splyce in their jungle.
That said, this Splyce team is late game. It doesn't shout late game the way you see kind of like a Discordia Kali composition, but Nemesis building into my preferred favorite build, the basic attack build. Jotun's doesn't agree with that, but you always go Jotun's first because 20% CDR on Nemesis Ultimate, yes please, right? You want that. So you buy Jotun's for the Nemesis Ultimate, but then after that you see a lot of this Executioner. It's going to go into basic attack items. And that means Scream's going to be killing people in the late game, not so much this early and mid. Venenu and CycloneSpin, Double Hunter. This is a late game comp. Splyce, 5,000 gold is exactly the moment where I start to worry about late game comps being behind. Because if you're down 3k gold, but you're like, we got a Chronos and a Kali, you don't really care at 16. 5,000 gold is where you really start to make the notice. And if it gets more than this, I think Splyce are in a lot of trouble. From here, I think Splyce can kind of find a gold, find a win, and kind of make their time until their carries come online.
Oh, poor Scream, man. Wanted to gank Vote. Just walks right over the board. And it's tough in these types of situations, but I don't think that 5,000 gold... I'm glad that you used the word notice, because Splyce have definitely noticed the fact that they're behind by now. There's just so much pressure coming in from Pittsburgh Knights, it's impossible not to notice it. They're right there in their face. But I do believe if Scream can just get the first Scare's Blessing Force out, that's really all Splyce need. And then Pittsburgh Knights are going to have to rely on, I think, just a natural team fight to try and get the better end of Splyce. But if Pittsburgh Knights are forcing those team fights before Splyce has the opportunity to farm up the difference, that's where the storyline gets a little convoluted here for Splyce, because you're not winning many trades when your team is 4 levels behind in Osiris.
Yeah, and that's really, like I said, this is the real scary moment, because this is the make or break spot. This is where Pittsburgh gets too far ahead for the late game to matter. Or Splyce maintains control of this deficit and are able to make plays. Splyce right now trying for the latter. They're going to be looking at EmilZy. A stun is good, a blink in front as well. Ultimate used on the support, and the Scare's Blessing will be used on top as well. The rest of Pittsburgh now coming in looking for the confirmation of the team fight. Scream goes down to the hand of Vote. Great job from the Scotsman as Venenu's being chased out by Deathwalker. Big moves from Zyrhoes, who helps out as well. Vote with the double kill. Not done yet. Pittsburgh Knights surging forward. Aror gets stunned out and DW on the chase. Double stun from Cabom. Zyrhoes don't care. Aror goes down and Deathwalker still chasing Cabom. Zyrhoes gets a double kill. 2 for the mid lane, 2 for the carry. And Pittsburgh Knights feel good about that.
This is a weakened Pittsburgh Knights squad, though, and CycloneSpin knows it. Everybody's just low enough that this Jingwei could possibly come up huge. Not going to invest the agility just yet, though. Waiting to see first how Pittsburgh Knights chooses to respond to this Jingwei showing face in the first place. And PK are not interested in trying to tangle with Cyclone right now. They'd much rather just reset off the successful team fight and look to revisit that Fire Giant pit. Probably another minute or two. I mean, they pulled so many different relics from Splyce, but Cyclone and Scream both still have their primary ones of the purification beads. And so long as those carries have a cleanse, then I think it'll be tough for PK to feel super comfortable with pulling that FG.
Got to agree there. Absolutely got to agree there. But at the same time, I mean, yeah, no, it's just going to be tough. Splyce, on the other hand, though, this lead for Pittsburgh starting to get out of control.
Well, these are the fights that Pittsburgh Knights have to be forcing right now. They're the ones in the lead, and you don't want Splyce to catch up to you.
Exactly. Like that's the thing, is that Splyce know that under 5,000 gold, they're kind of content. Well, Pittsburgh Knights know that too, and so they're going to force Splyce to fight before they're ready. Cold Fury is popped, and Pittsburgh Knights steal it away. Oni goes the way of the Pittsburgh guys, and Splyce again suffer defeat. Scream gets hit by Vote. Big numbers.
I couldn't even tell if that was the second shot or the third, but either way, Vote is finding the snipes. Now Cabom still looking for the retreat, but not going to be able to get away. Dot ticks from Kepri. Actually going to get the last hit here, but Adapting's not done with fighting just yet. He's looking for Venenu now, trying to utilize that mink form just to catch up, but Venenu just keeps wiggling.
And here comes Aror to provide a stun. Beads away. No kill. And that'll be good enough. Cyclone, on the other hand, trying to push up the left side lane, gets TP'd on, and now has to deal with Deathwalker, who's just not going to miss any of this stuff. CycloneSpin goes looking for the ultimate. He's going to be greeted by Arlong Shen, though. The rest of Pittsburgh Knights pushing down the mid lane. CycloneSpin trying to take the 2v1, and not going to do it. Kill number 10 for Pittsburgh Knights goes the same time as the tier 2 tower falls in the mid lane. Splyce looking up at 11,000 gold, a big deficit.
No one from Splyce had any sort of chance of being able to help out Cyclone. He was just completely on his own out there, looking to respond for some gold by taking down a PK T2 tower over in duo, just cut off by Deathwalker. Great recognition, though, from Deathwalker to hang around and help out his teammate, because I think of Adapting, and just try to take the 1v1 outright with Cyclone, he might have wound up just dying there.
With that crit online, right? He's got obviously the explosive bolts and the rage blade. 22 minutes on the clock, 22-22 to have some fun with it. Pittsburgh Knights gonna start the Fire Giant and end the Fire Giant. Aror jumps in a little bit too late, and we sent back to base right on time. 4-0-3 for the Scottish carry. Pittsburgh Knights leaning on the rare ROM as they look towards the right side lane.
Vote was just so undisturbed in duo for so long that there wasn't really a way for Scream to effectively punish him. It was just too much forcing happening on that solo side of the map that Scream had to rotate for to try and give a helping hand.
Oh, wow.
There just really wasn't anything that Cabom could have done there.
Nah, it's just one player. Cabom gets grabbed, and that's rather unfortunate. The 3 versus 1 on the right side of the map, almost good enough to take the Phoenix, but Cyclone and Scream show up. Waiting for the minions. There's the blink backward. Scream chases the carry out. EmilZy the same. Jormungandr, on the other hand, didn't get the memo. Knocks one up, sets it up for the shot on a ROM, and the third will not find a home.
Venenu, though, still trying to get away, but get actually caught up by adapting. Beautiful root placement there from EmilZy to stop him in his tracks, but it's not over just yet for Splyce. Pittsburgh Knights, they've sieged the right side Phoenix. They're looking to make their way into mid, and it doesn't seem as though Splyce are going to have a chance to slow them down.
Not at all. Mid lane Phoenix down to about 25, and it's at 0 at this point. A baker's dozen in kills for Pittsburgh Knights, while Splyce has only accumulated 1 PK. Feeling like PK fire as they're trying to get on out of here. Zero's a little stunned up, but ain't no thing. Pittsburgh Knights feel clean right now.
I'm surprised that Zyrhoes even opted to use his purification. That felt more like habit than necessity there for Zyrhoes. He gets hit with CC and the man reflexively responds with that beads cleanser. Still though, Deathwalker, having not even been a participant of the mid or right side Phoenix sieges, was actually pushing up these waves over and left the entire time, and now with only 1 Phoenix left standing, CycloneSpin is going to try to back home in time, but I'm not sure that even he'll be enough to help.
That's the craziest part. Pittsburgh Knights take a right side Phoenix and a mid lane Phoenix with 3 players. The bomb links to the backside and is going to be in trouble. Still alive? Just kidding! Vote out of nowhere, crits him out of hellware. Yeah, great plays. As Vote becomes unstoppable. 7 kills. As the double kill goes his direction. Pittsburgh Knights 5-on-3 power play.
Venenu trying to do what he can with clearing out these waves on the Moozing Comm. EmilZy going to get knocked up by a well-timed persistent gust, but it's all about Scream. He's dancing with 2 now. Adapting going to catch him with the pin, and Deathwalker is going to finish him off with the sickle blades. Scream, Cabom, and Aror all still dead. CycloneSpin to join him. Scare's Blessing having been forced at the very least onto EmilZy, but Venenu's the only one left standing.
All 3 birds are down. Cabom gets to respawn. So does Aror. Venenu's still alive, but I think it's a little bit too short here, folks. Game number 3 goes the way of Pittsburgh Knights. They make it look easy.
Well, for Pittsburgh Knights, it might have actually been a little bit easy there in Game 3. Despite Splyce's best efforts, I think that Pittsburgh Knights just got off too much of a hot start there because they just had all that free pressure coming out of solo lane. And I think a lot of that also starts with the way that the level 1 fight was handled between the solo and supports. I definitely don't think that it was in Cabom's best interest to try and look for peel there for Aror because he ended up taking a little bit too much damage, and then they just didn't have enough to contest that blue buff.
You know, earlier when we were looking at the vote selection here, we said, you know, Rom, what are the reasons that he just hasn't been picked? And I said, he only really does damage. Well, if all you're going to do is damage, you might as well do the most damage. And Rom took this game over. Top damage, 7 kills, top kills there as well. What more do you ask from your carry? In a game where largely hunters have been kind of quiet, Vote lets everybody know the ADC role isn't dead. Back to you guys on the desk.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Taco. Night Scrap. Another win. No big surprise here. This kind of feels like what we expected from the beginning, despite that game one kind of bit of a shakeup. But what'd you see here, Tully?
I saw Cabom getting cyberbullied is what I saw.
It was
Multiple blue buff invades. Without the Kuzenbo, he wasn't as safe on the RDO. It was a good way to lean on the weakness of the substitute. And then as a result, once the late game popped off, vote on the Rama, making those highlight plays.
Yeah, adapting, rotate over to the solo lane early and often, from what I was able to see, to kind of catch Cabom out. And they really didn't have any way to try and alleviate the pressure there or match it elsewhere. Vote had his jungle warded up from the beginning of the game, and that made it so tough for Scream to find avenues to try and sneak in there and look for any ganks over there on the duo side. I mean, it was just really tough for Splyce to find anywhere to go to try and look to find kills or pressure.
And it's got to be so demoralizing when you're the ones doing the objective constantly to get it stripped away from you. In game one, we saw that back and forth trade. Game number 3 going the way of PK. EmilZy on the Capri, showing off a little bit on the Guardian status. And what really was important was not only the leaning on the Cabom was how they did it, was through double warriors. Osiris for Deathwalker, which is what I was expecting this entire set, and then also Erlong Shen, taking that away from Scream, giving it to adapting up against 2 hunters. And that's a matchup that the Warriors win. Building Spectral Armor, Midgardian Mail. They have so many different ways of building against these double hunters that Venenu on the EmilZy, CycloneSpin on the Jingwei couldn't do much to escape the clutches of the double warrior.
And a basic attack jungler, didn't it? I mean, it felt a little bit too much like all their eggs in one basket, a bit different from Splyce. I said about the reliance on the slows, but you're right about the reliance on the basic attacks too, and it made it so much easier for these double warriors or to defend against them. Then you factor in EmilZy on the Kepri. There was never a point where Scream could feel comfortable going all in, because EmilZy could essentially erase that by dropping the Scarab's Blessing.
They were never really worried from the Knight side of you because of that Kepri, right? And then you were talking about another basic attack jungler on Scream's Nemesis. They hovered over Ao Kwang. They were giving it some consideration. That would have probably been a better look in terms of making it more difficult to itemize against the composition out of Splyce. Adapting builds the Stone Cutting Sword. Not only does it deal with the hunters in that way, but also against the Nemesis.
Makes it really hard to win any basic attack trade against the Erlong Shen, as if you had much hope anyway in the first place. And you could see Scream putting some presence, on the solo side at the start of that game by trying to be near the blue buff and make sure Cabom wasn't constantly having that stripped away from him. But at a certain point, he can't afford to stay there and only maybe get the blue buff for his own blue buff, right? I mean, it just was not a good enough use of Scream's time on the Nemesis, and eventually he ended up having to give up on it.
He had to use the beads just to escape the clutches from the Kepri abduct at that level 4 marker. That was a great play from EmilZy, making sure that solo lane side strength from PK would consist throughout the course of the game.
So far, though, this has looked like the set we thought it would, except for that very first one. And totally, that's my question for you. What felt like the biggest difference for you in that one? I think it has been this constant pressure in solo. In game 1, they kind of left Cabom to his own devices, and even though he was behind, it wasn't nearly as stifling as what we've seen here in games 2 and 3.
I think it was also the Osiris this time around. I think that compared to game number 2, this third game, it was just more evident of how powerful the Osiris pick is once you do get the blue buff invades. Because game number 2, they weren't really stripping it away as much, and I think that the RDO pick wasn't a bad idea, but you have to be closer to clear the wave. Kuzenbo, you don't necessarily have to, and even if you do use your dash, you can get another dash by use of the spiked shell. So maybe go for a more passive solo laner. Like if you're going to concede the solo lane because PK is going to invade your blue buff with an aggressive Erlong Shen Osiris, focus on your dual lane side. Get CycloneSpin ahead, but I really haven't seen that because of all the vision from PK. They're anticipating Scream from making those rotations, and they're already taking the 2 to 3 step precautionary measure.
And that's what makes the Nemesis pick feel a bit weird, which is that it can sometimes be tough. It feels like for Nemesis to generate that pressure early on. She can be strong to definitely catch you out if you're by yourself, but her gank potential is not as high as maybe like a rat in that slot or someone like that who can kind of manufacture their own pressure.
Maybe go for Giannis mid for Venenu and Amaterasu out of Cabom and utilize that mobility to try to, reposition yourself in these late game team fights. It's what worked out for them in game number 1. They got like that one great team fight, was able to win off of adapting, being a little bit too aggressive.
Or what about this Jingwei pick for CycloneSpin? That's not going to get you any pressure in lane either.
Yeah.
It does mean that you're going to be safe. You don't have to worry about the ganks as much. But in a world where you're likely not going to win solo, maybe take the fight to duo, like you're saying, and pick something aggressive there and try and see if you can be the aggressors on that side.
That last game, the Jingwei pick was because they wanted to strip that one away from
That's
Vote,
true, yeah.
right? They already got a Moose and Cobb. They wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be a safe hunter out of Vote. And sure, Rom's not the safest hunter, but if you're not ganking the Rom,
Right.
he's safe anyway, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the deadliest late game hunters that you ever have to face.
And Vote played it really well, hitting a lot of those snipes,
yeah.
showing you just how well he could clean up some kills. I mean, there's some times where Scream was making a nice play to just barely juke out the Jormungandr, and then Vote would snipe him down, right, and not let him get away. So really good work from him on that pick. And now Splyce with their backs up against the wall in the first pick spot. We said this is a stronger one for them. It's just a question of can they make proper use of it.
Well, they're going to stick to their guns, still taking away the Mage ADC. Surprised for them not to leave at least both of them open to try to lock in the Freya for themselves, if
Right.
that's going to be the case, because Freya's been really hard carrying a lot of these games. We saw in that last set what Funballer was able to do against Space Station Gaming, but still realizing what the problem was in game number 3 was Deathwalker.
Deathwalker's Osiris has been taken away from him. Merlin banned away by the Knights. Splyce now must consider, are they okay giving away this Jormungandr? Do they want to try and pick something else strong for themselves? Nope. No questions, no debates. Take this Jormungandr now. Don't give that one over to Zyrhoes yet again, who's loved playing it in the mid lane so far.
But now you're leaving open a Moose and Cobb for PK to strip that one away. Surprised not to see Naja in this set, whereas it was heavily prioritized by Renegades in the last one. Erlang Shen could be another good look for PK, realizing that Scream had a good game 1 with it. Adapting needs to repeat that kind of performance, but might be a different course of action.
The Fafnir being hovered here early by the Knights, and this maybe to try and cut out some of the nonsense Splyce like to do where they run these double basic attack characters and instead undercut that right from the beginning. They're hovering, not entirely all in on this pick for EmilZy just yet, and this would take it away from Aror, who played it last game, but EmilZy played it in game 2, clearly something that he likes, not just to strip away from Aror.
Yeah, he's been playing it consistently. If he's not playing the Terra, he'll play the Fafnir.
Yeah.
And like he showed the Capri to great success. And with Soul in Fafnir, I'm surprised they locked in Soul now, right? Because if you're going Fafnir, you want to be able to get your physical hunter, which should be the Moose and Cobb in theory, seeing how it's not banned, and a Soul and Fafnir, right? So
Right, that's real scary.
only person that plays Soul is Zyrhoes these days, so...
That's definitely going to be going to him, paired with the Fafnir. They like to prioritize Zyrhoes' pick early, whether it's the Yorm or even the Soul. But Splyce hovering the Chernobog, and this is surprising to me. With Jingwei still out there, maybe they're thinking that the Knights wouldn't want to go Jingwei with the Soul already. Like maybe they want more pressure from their Hunter pick, and they could wait a little bit on it. But hovering over this Churn, at least for now.
So the game 1 where PK literally banned almost everything under the sun from
Right.
CycloneSpin. He went to Chernobog, realizing it's still a safe pick. He's able to farm, get the attack speed that he really needs. And he's going to go back to it again because this is a mind game between these two teams where PK is like, okay, yeah, Jingwei is open. Yeah, so is a Moose and Cobb, but we're expecting you to pick it. We don't want either of those two.
The Erlang Shen, though, is really good for Scream. This is something he played back in games 1 and 2. He really likes his pick. And in both those games, he was able to do much more in the early game than he was on this Nemesis just now, even though they eventually went on to lose game number 2. And I think that's already a big deal for them. CycloneSpin on the Chernobog could even potentially rotate to fights too, depending on how they want to play. Maybe this can help with Cabom a little bit more.
In games 1, 2, and 3, Mercury was actually banned by Splyce.
Right.
All 3 games being left open, now
Clearly they were
adapting. Gonna try to show off the late game hyper carry style.
That's a bit scary for this team. He doesn't work with Golden Blade or Golden Bow for that matter, much the way that he used to, but certainly can still be plenty potent in the jungle for you. And I've talked about it before, I think Mercury can provide some decent control elements to a fight too that you gotta worry about.
He's going to be such a big threat, and he's all smiles as adapting once that pick gets locked in. And whenever he's comfortable, the rest of PK is going to be comfortable. And I think maybe that's why they're all smiling. It's like, you're a substitute and you're getting focused, man. That's got to be a good feeling for Cabom.
It's the shallowest pool that they know of, so I think it makes good sense, man, to take that away from him. This Mercury, though, is scary because they already have the Fafnir, they already have the Soul. Now Splyce are forced to ban away a bunch of other basic attackers when, like you said, a Moose and Cobb is still out there that you have to worry about. I mean, at this point, even the Jing Wei is still on the table. That's not been grabbed up. I think PK has a really good chance to pair some dominant basic attackers with the rest of this draft.
Even if Vote goes for a mage and not an auto attacker, this is still a great composition for burning down objectives.
Like Soul Mercury's enough, yeah.
Yeah, like Soul Mercury, Fafnir, Coerce on top of a Frenzy. You don't even maybe need a second physical hunter,
True,
honestly.
man. That's already so much damage that they have. So very interesting what they're going to be picking up here for Vote, as Splyce felt forced to ban away 2 hunters. But the Knights have really adapted well this set. The Kuzenbo taken away. The Hercules being banned out here now too. That's interesting. I'd have thought maybe that this Jormungandr would be for Aror, but it looks like PK didn't buy that, and they were right. The Kumbhakarna coming through means that there is another support being drafted along with a Nuwa.
Definitely an Aror pick. He's been playing Kumbhakarna for the past couple of weeks, starting with Blink at level 1, leaving now Erlang Shen for Scream, Jormungandr for Cabom, Nuwa pick yet again for Venenu, a safe self-peeler whenever Mercury looks for the Sonic Boom, the special delivery. You're going to need to find a way to peel for yourself. You got the Fire Shards to give you about 3 seconds hang time, and then you got those Clay Golems to look for a stun.
If they pick up this Achilles, that's a ton of pressure. Life just got so much harder for Cabom if he is the one piloting this Jormungandr in the solo lane. So difficult to miss Fatal Strike on that gigantic Jormungandr model. I mean, no way that one's going to be off the mark. And even though Achilles has gone through some changes, I think he still feels plenty potent in that solo lane.
Oh, he's going to be so important because there's already enough consistent damage over time of the Soul basic attacks to Mercury. That burst damage is going to set up those Fatal Strikes very well. PK's draft looking very scary. The question is, where do they really lean in terms of focus firing? Are they going to go on Cabom again the way they did against his Artio in the last game? Or are they going to lean on Venenu's Nuwa to not allow Nuwa to get to that late game?
They've got a decent amount of semi-global presence between the Chernobog and the Nuwa. Maybe they can give Cabom a bit of a lifeline if he is the one they focus out. But we'll find out shortly. Game number 4, Splyce and PK get it back to Tom and Taco.
Thanks a lot, friendos here. Great job breaking it down. And as we look towards game number 4, my question to you, Taco, is who's going to win?
I couldn't call it just from looking at the drafts alone. I think that there's definitely components that can work out for both of these teams, but with the way that PK have been opening up their matches for the past couple of games, I definitely am a much bigger fan of this adjustment from Splyce to bring a little bit more early game presence as a result.
I got to agree. I think waiting for the late game is an unwinning strategy when you're having issues in the early game. So Pittsburgh Knights going to aggress on the left side already, but walk away with a whole bunch of nothing. Looking for the ward vision is what PK were doing, and they get it. 1 ward by red buff, 1 ward by purple.
You have to remember, the early death that Vote took came from Scream punishing him for an invade attempt. So Pittsburgh Knights right now, I think, trying to make sure not to repeat that for their hunter, and are going to get the deeper ward vision, because now you can have clear sighting of Scream on his jungle track.
Scream out there taunting nobody in particular.
Sometimes you just want to hear the joke lines your character has. I respect it.
So normally we see the mid lane help out with the jungle. Scream actually here soloing his speed buff while Nuwa pushes in the mid lane. Is it because they're going to go someplace after the fact? Why take that away?
I think that Scream's just helping to push because it's just Splyce kind of mixing things up a little bit. Maybe trying to catch Pittsburgh Knights off guard with a possible early rotation. Also, when you have your support starting in solo lane, you're a little bit more flexible.
Well, Scream hits level 2 off of speed, red, mid heartbeat.
Well, if he does speed up by himself and then rebel by himself, it's more than enough.
Exactly. So speed and red is what brought him to level 2. And so that's what was going on. They just want Scream to be as fat as possible, as early as possible.
This was a smart adjustment, though. Scream not going to spend all of his time trying to get the big heartbeat. Instead, kind of peeking to see which direction Zyrhoes and Adapting were headed in. EmilZy now trying to take care of this big harpy of Adapting's back harpies, but Scream hoping that he can steal it away. Got it with the turtle form, but could be in some trouble.
Yeah, Aror's going to show up and find a root. But Scream going to walk away. Doesn't really want that one. Adapting shows up. CycloneSpin has a little bit of ward vision. Has the dash, though. Beads is good. Goes to the right side. This is a dead Cyclone. And Adapting will do the deed. First blood goes to Pittsburgh.
Had absolutely no cooldowns. Think that upper ward just a little bit too deep into that choke point. Venenu now could be in a spot of trouble of his own, but it's EmilZy who's going to get knocked up by Scream. Splyce looking to answer back to that first blood, but a nicely timed shell is going to keep EmilZy alive.
Venenu tried to get it, won't be able to. And another root from Aror, still won't be able to find it either. And so Pittsburgh Knights here narrowly escape that one. Nice job as EmilZy wiggles on out. And at the same time, confirm the oracles. Some nice vision on the non-gold Fury, since it's not there and it won't be there for a couple of minutes.
Sometimes you just want that experience, man. Oracles are worth a lot. That's why they take so much to kill early on. But because CycloneSpin was dead, really nobody left to try and threaten Adapting or vote on that left-hand side. So Adapting had ample time, I think, to drop those oracles and made full utility of it. Now he's got a small but definite experience lead over Scream.
That's the goal. Slightly one step ahead, right? Especially since the whole strategy for Scream seemed to be keep him ahead. So being down in that respect is a little bit rough. Not like Splyce give too much up.
I think this is where you start to notice, though, the differences between having a sub and having Baskin.
For sure.
Because for Baskin, not only would he probably be holding his own a little bit better there and probably be able to take more aggressive matchups into DW, but I also think that Baskin is really good at punishing enemy junglers because he will be at your back harpies almost every single time permitted.
That's really what it is that like Baskin will affect the map in other places, and Cabom here is kind of relegated to this lane. That said, you were talking about playing more aggressively. This Jormungandr is more aggressive. The Kuzenbo can be either or. We saw him played rather kind of safe. Ardio also kind of either or, played a little bit more aggressive than we saw the Kuzenbo, honestly. So the Yorm, maybe this is where Cabom goes all the way in. He's got pen boots. Maybe he's going up.
I still think Cabom's going to struggle with trying to work his way into Adapting's jungle. I'm pretty sure Deathwalker is going to be able to keep him zoned off of that. But it is impressive when you factor in that Splyce have been, or Scream, I shouldn't really say Splyce, but Scream has been dealing with constant invades into his jungle and still managing to stay relevant for the most part by just picking apart whatever scraps he can find from Adapting's jungle instead.
Scream's gonna need some scraps as he's joining the scrap, and he'll be scrapped down. 2 kills for Pittsburgh Knights in total. An early game start for PK, I'm sure.
Some deaths happen so quickly that
he dead so quickly.
You just don't even really know what to say.
I mean, that's when your brain gets kind of frazzled. Start mentioning appliances, right? Just washing, dishwasher.
That may be an amateur hour, but for right now, we're in the SPL, baby. Zyrhoes and EmilZy chilling in mid lane, and they're just gonna back off after clearing out the minions. They've done just about everything that they needed to. And it's really up to Splyce, I think, to kind of force Pittsburgh Knights to do something differently here.
You're absolutely right, Taco. You ain't wrong. Adapting here. Just getting some farm. No big deal for him so far. The Mercury, though. A hyper carry is an overused term. Mercury is a classic hyper carry. If he gets ahead, he's ahead right now. If he gets too crazy of a lead, he will just win you the game. And that is exactly, this is real classic. Just give Kenneth something he can carry on and watch the show. Right now, 1-0-1. We'll see which way it goes.
Scream trying to interrupt here, but might not have realized that Adapting was right behind him. A nice epic uppercut's going to prevent Zyrhoes from having the follow-up damage right away. And that might have just been enough to get Scream out of there. Different case story, though, for Aror, who's on the retreat.
Nice job. Just a beautiful job from Aror protecting his team that time. Knockup is all he needed. gets just that. Pittsburgh Knights try to aggress, don't have the damage, unfortunately. An interesting look for Pittsburgh's mid lane. The Adapting gets taunted. This could be trouble for Kenneth. The turnaround is big. Zyrhoes with the ultimate. Soul, baby. 3 kills in total as Pittsburgh just continues to find their shots.
That Supernova just removed Scream entirely. There's absolutely nothing he could have really done there from that position. It was a good idea, I think, to look for the punish on Adapting just a little bit too soon, I think, out the door as Cabom narrowly avoids getting Fatal Strike by Deathwalker underneath his T1 tower. A lot riding on these solo kills right now for DW. He can't slip up and let Cabom get one in on him.
Not this time around. If Cabom were to solo Deathwalker, it would probably be as pervasive as 667. Like, I don't think it would ever die.
I think Deathwalker dies if he dives the tower for a little bit too long.
Like when he
in the last game,
like
he
when
almost,
he did that?
He almost died to the tower, but I'm just saying a solo kill's a solo kill.
I'm with it. No. Ultra, like, that's what you do, bud. That's what you do. Oh, man. Funny stuff as Aror tries to find his jungler.
Adapting, gonna get forced out of that special delivery. But with no red buff to pick up, Pittsburgh Knights, they've been poking their heads into Splyce's jungle buffs and just not finding what they were looking for. Just a little bit too early or a little bit too late for the actual invade opportunity. But I think it's only a matter of time because Pittsburgh Knights have definitely been itching for some heavy action now.
Exactly. Pittsburgh has just been like, will you fight us? Will you fight us? Will you fight us? Will you fight us? Adapting says, fine, I'll fight you. Deathwalker gets 1, can't find the second. Aror knocks him up, and this might be trouble for DW. And it will be. Aror gets the kill. Contributed from Cabom. But Zyrhoes here in the mid lane making sure that Nuwa can't leave the tower line.
Here's the problem now, though, for Aurora, trying to find that groggy strike onto Zyrhoes. Venenu with some excellent follow-up, going to force out Zyrhoes' purification beads. But it's new Wash. He just doesn't have that extra little to get the job done. And now, Zyrhoes, he'll get out safe and sound. The 1-for-1 trade, not ideal, but not awful either. I say not ideal because it was Scream who died. Anybody else from Splyce, and I think it's okay, but when the jungler dies and Adapting is still alive, Adapting just went straight to solo, farmed out an entire wave, and then got a free back to base.
I mean, Scream has died 3 times thus far. He's about a level and a half down. Not just 1 level, he's a level and a half down. So this might be problematic for him coming into the later stages of the game, especially considering Scream has been kind of the guy to look at here for the Splyce unit.
A great setup, though, from Pittsburgh Knights to kind of jumpstart that fight to begin with. Adapting's just lining up the Sonic Boom and finds his opening to catch out. It's honestly surprising, I think, that Splyce walked away with any kills at all there, but making something out of nothing can sometimes go a long way for player mentality.
Coming from, yeah, I'm with you. I absolutely. I think we all have a moment where you're looking at, and it goes back to, I think, match number 1. Adapting just.
Oh, this is just cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying.
Now.
I knew you were gonna say
it. Really is. That's not fair, man. They're not allowed to do that to Cabom. Come on.
Cabom is also such a nice guy, you know.
They're gonna lose their lunch visitation rights.
Oh man, not a great look. I was going back to match number 1 though. Funball on Freya, Dardas on Kronos. Hunbats comes into lane, and Freya has 10% HP. Fear no evil. Freya still turns it around. Those moments where you're like, I'm certainly dead, right? Oh! Those moments are the ones that can catalyze a team, like you said, for sure. So, can you believe they didn't ban Kronos? Okay, sorry, that was last.
It's been, what time is it right now?
I think it's about
4:10, and I'm still not over it.
Yeah. For those that didn't watch it, Renegades beat out Space Station Gaming 3-0 And
They
Kronos,
only had to win one game.
yeah,
to be
Kronos
fair.
and Freya were let through, and that made us scratch our heads not even a little, just a whole lot. Here in Splyce versus Pittsburgh Knights, the drafts have been a little bit more respectable, I should say. I've really enjoyed the drafts from both teams.
Ooh, Aror actually stealing back his own red buff for Venenu off the Blink Epic Uppercut. Adapting, probably not too happy about that one, but he knew that there wasn't any real reason to get concerned about a follow-up from Splyce. Splyce right now it's very Vulture-esque of Splyce because they have been trying to find farm, but there is not a lot of it around. And it's largely just because of the fact that DW has so much pressure coming out of solo lane that Adapting has just been left to his own devices.
Well, now Cabom has sort of caught up just a little bit. I think he does trail by about half a level still, but not the egregious level plus that he was behind before. So a look there for Splyce for sure. Down 3,000 in total, Splyce is. So a rough look for sure, but not as problematic as what we've seen in the past.
Is that your sneaker?
Yeah.
I don't know if they heard that.
I don't think they did, Taco. I like squeaked on the floor. Good job. Right side Heartbeat being attacked here. Left side, big Heartbeat being attacked. And nobody knows? They know after... Okay, what happened was CycloneSpin showed up. Knights back off. Global vision from Nuwa. Great play.
Oh, but Scream, not as great of a play for him, at least. He won't be able to get away this time around. Sonic Boom gonna get cut a little bit short there from Adapting. Aurora answers back.
Oh! The trust in the teammate. Beautiful play by Deathwalker. The windup for Achilles' ultimate execute is so long. He just goes into it trusting that his team is going to bring the enemy down below the execute threshold. Love that play! And with that, Pittsburgh are going to open the door to the gold.
Trust or hope, either way, it doesn't matter now because CycloneSpin is back to the action, looking to steal this gold. Fury,
He gets it!
CycloneSpin gets it! He steals it right in front of all three of them. Will wind up dying to Zyrhoes for it, but the steal is a possibility. Living Nightmare able to close that distance in no time at all.
And what did you say before? You know, when you turn nothing into something? Those are the plays! Those are the plays!
They are the small ones that can definitely start building up into the bigger picture.
And also, I had mentioned the down 2,000 to 3,000 gold Fury is my favorite. Well, I'm trying to fight and vote and doing just that, and the Thorns are working out as well. But that's the one where, you know, if Pittsburgh Knights gets it, the game's not over, but you've got this the 6,000 gold lead. Well, that's all you're thinking about. Now Splyce are still in that 3K range. They still have some fightability, and Auror's going to get another kill. Hot damn, 2 kills in total for the support.
I knew as soon as I saw the spam pings.
Yep.
It was either Cabom or Aror trying to highlight to the other. He's right here, man. And as soon as Aror sees it, just blinks right in. Nothing Adapting could have done there, I think, to change the outcome of that one. Vote just being punished for overstaying.
You love to see it. You just really love to see it. I think Aror
Not
playing
if you vote.
Aror playing on the Kumba though is fun to me because Kumba's another character that can be aggressive if you feel like making him aggressive.
He's only aggressive, I swear. Especially in the hands of somebody like Aror.
There is somebody out there that stays in the back and peels for their team, but
I want to know
don't-
which Kumbhakarna you've ever encountered that has tried to peel for you. And not just look for the kill.
One time I paid Hindu Man, and he played Kumba and he peeled for me, up until like 7 minutes,
But
and
you
then
had to- Did you just say you had to bribe your boss for protection?
yes. Have you ever played Smite with me? Nobody really wants to play Smite with me from the office.
Well, actually, we all have.
Listen, that was a concerted effort from the professional players to put me down. That was a concerted effort. That was intentional. You know, I even asked them before that game. I said, "All right, here's the deal. Just let me gank Sino style. Let me."
That's where. No wonder.
So I
You
told.
were wondering why did I die 20 times, guys?
It was 27. I went up to them and I said, "Look, I'm gonna gank the duo lane. Let me get 1 kill, then do whatever you want." I died 27 times. 16 minutes in, and Aror, the only Splyce member. Lonely here as Cabom lands from the ultimate. The rest of Pittsburgh Knights looking for the push. Deathwalker being attacked by Screammmmm in the ultimate retreat.
Those are not the health bars you want to see, though, if you're Pittsburgh Knights.
For real.
Splyce actually doing a pretty solid job holding on here. CycloneSpin, though, right on the back of Aror. It's going to get jumped upon almost immediately. Goes inside the wall, but it's just not enough right now. Splyce going to lose the Pyromancer out. Pittsburgh Knights, I think the problem was just not enough members in position, but check out Screammmmm. He's just been counter-jungling this entire time.
Which is huge. Screammmmm was camped early game, and camp is the wrong word because junglers move around a lot. I get it, but
Sought
he was
out.
focused, targeted, sought out, killed over and over again. 4 times, 0-4-1. That's half of the kills that Pittsburgh Knights have in total. He was pushed down and kept out of the conversation. Now, he's above adapting as far as experience is concerned. He's got some extra itemization. Atalanta's bow, an interesting choice, one we don't see all the time.
Hey, be careful who you make fun of in the early game. You never know what might just happen when the game transcends into that mid to late.
That's fair. We were looking at it from the Nemesis perspective as Cabom gets double teamed under the tower. Screams here as well. No knockup, but the Mink form is crazy attack speed. And Deathwalker pinned. Gonna get knocked up again by Aror, who's down at the bottom, but still very tanky, is DW. Cabom's trying to fight into it. Only 2,000 gold down, so Splyce have a team fight here.
Check out that damage, though, from Venenu onto Vote. Decent numbers done, but Zyrhoes gonna be able to pick up Venenu as soon as he comes back down from the fire shards. Bringing him back down to earth, it seems like, in a way. And now Pittsburgh Knights still not disengaging, by the way. Screammmmm gonna juke out the Supernova, but it's only a temporary escape as Deathwalker cleans him up on the backside, and Cabom soon to follow. Pittsburgh Knights with a 3-for-0 exchange might even be able to look at this T2 tower or even the Fire Giant.
Cyclone couldn't get the tier 2 either. Just able to push up for the tier 1. Fire Giant will be the focus here. EmilZy and Zyrhoes are looking towards the objective. Soul will likely have to back off. I don't know if the damage is here, and yeah, that's the choice, especially after Turnabout ult comes through. Aror, again, the lone member of Splyce here. Aror is trying to do everything to get his team to stay relevant in this match.
But it might have just been a little bit too much to handle, and Splyce seemingly overwhelmed right now as Pittsburgh Knights' aggression doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing down. And yet the Fire Giant uncontested, just shy of that 20-minute mark. And that's a really early Fire Giant. When you already have a experience lead starting to develop, and now Pittsburgh Knights are going to have all 5 members with FG to try and siege through the remainder towers of Splyce. It's going to be a tough one for Splyce to hold down.
It's absolutely true.
I would expect them to maybe take a defense on 1 or 2 of the T2 towers, but even then, because you don't want to let all that gold go for free. It's so much gold and experience.
But finding where to properly defend is tough, and even, you know, how. We talked before about Rom and how we haven't really seen him. How about Soul? The Zyrhoes and Funball are the only players this season to actually pull this character out, and even then, it's been a rare sight. What about Soul? She still has a lot of pressure. She still has good range, but I find myself wondering, you know, magical ADCs are so damn good. Is it just that Kronos and Freya are that much better, so we don't see her at all?
I think that Soul is very situational and very niche pick. This felt more like a response pick from Zyrhoes, because Zyrhoes doesn't need to be the star of the show, but right now, we gotta talk about Aror knocking up Adapting with that epic uppercut. Good follow-up damage for Venenu as well with the Fire Shards, but even having proc Divine across all 5 members of Pittsburgh Knights, no one else from Splyce can really get up close and personal to finish the job.
Cabom does his best job to zone and does so successfully. That's exactly what you're supposed to do as a Jormungandr, just buy time the entire time of your ultimate. EmilZy's here, and no damage has been done to the bird just yet. Venenu in trouble, getting chased down by Deathwalker, finds it in the fog. Meanwhile, CycloneSpin chasing down the duo lane. Frenzy's pop from EmilZy, expecting Zyrhoes to turn around. Not the case. Deathwalker, by the way, all the way in Florida, while his team is coming down from the northeast. Here comes the death for Deathwalker, and he'll wiggle out. He literally walked away from death. Pittsburgh Knights doing whatever they want.
Cyclone got a little bit baited up first, and now adapting, just gonna roll right in with the Sonic Boom, but doesn't want to eat those Phoenix shots for it. Loses the beads and Aegis in the process, but now Aror's gonna take an untimely spill here to Vote. Vote's still looking to push in against Cabom. That's a double for the Jingwei, maybe even looking for the trip.
I think the third kill might just be the Titan. Deathwalker comes right on back as soon as he left, and the Titan will go down. CycloneSpin gonna answer first, though. Scream gets a kill on adapting, and maybe I spoke too soon, boys. I did. Pittsburgh Knights walk away as Splyce successfully defend. Very good job. I didn't realize there were so many defenders there, but Cyclone and Scream combine and put 2 down, and all of a sudden Splyce are still in it. Deathwalker running away. The chase is good.
Scream, though, gotta be careful. Zero still sticking around, but Deathwalker is just so tanky. Scream has all of this attack speed, but not enough to cut through the prots just yet from DW. And that's with only 3 stacks into that Urchin, but all that physical defense prioritization that Deathwalker opted for early on definitely paying off tenfold right now.
Really good target prioritization coming out from Pittsburgh Knights there. EmilZy and adapting are the exact 2 players that need to die there. If they don't go down, you know, Pittsburgh can probably figure it out, but you need to take care of the Fafnir who's coercing the Mercury. That damage is absurd.
But it feels so awful, I think, if you're Splyce trying to attack a tank as opposed to the carries. It's just, I think Splyce are, I don't want to call it fighting fire with fire, because I think that point stands a little bit more so when things are even.
Sure.
But for the Pittsburgh Knights, they just have so many different options that they can lean into as a fight continues to develop, and it's just not the same type of circumstance for Splyce. I think that they're a little bit too reliant on having some kind of knockout from either Aror or Scream to really set up Venenu or Cyclone. I also don't think that Splyce have been all grouped up for a fight in a really long time now.
This might be the first time as Scream comes in from the left side. Pittsburgh still pushing, but biding their time, waiting for their moment. EmilZy looking for it. Left side flank from Scream. Still not going to go just yet. Your 2 tower stands. Pittsburgh Knights leaking in. There's the blink from Aror. The fight from Splyce likely to follow. Vote has a dash to the back end to avoid some of the nonsense, but here comes Cabom. Scream's going to be around the backside as well. Frenzies have been popped. Venenu goes to the sky, and the rest of Pittsburgh Knights looking for the retreat, but Deathwalker caught up, uses the ultimate to get out, and adapting goes right back in.
Look at Aror, though, gets caught out by that Sonic Boom, and that split-second stun is all it took for the Pittsburgh Knights to 180 the situation. Scream gonna be able to confirm the red buff, but for absolutely nobody, blinks out of adapting special delivery. Adapting charging up his own stim, was looking for a boxing match here against the Erlang. Won't be able to find it. Scream gonna default to backing in base instead. Mid Phoenix, though, already under siege. Well,
or buffs. Yeah, it's
hold
a buff.
up, though. Might get worse for Pittsburgh Knights. CycloneSpin going to find the first kill onto Vote. A nice egg is going to avoid the fatal strike as well, but adapting, able to pick up the pieces after all, will bring down CycloneSpin in the end here.
Good chase.
Any sort of hopes, though, that Splyce might have had for dropping that Fire Giant, definitely going to be gone right now. I'm not even sure they can get this Oni Fury. Pittsburgh Knights still sticking around. They're not trying to give anything to Splyce.
Yeah, there's 10%. Pittsburgh Knights are able to pick it up. Well, they're going to look for the kills. Cabom goes underground. Scream, on the other hand, trying to take out Deathwalker, and will. Nice job there for the jungler. Adapting on the other hand. Out of there.
Yeah.
Safe and sound. 30 HP is less than what Nuon does.
Not a chance. baby. That's what you pick Nuwa for. If Pittsburgh Knights, hey, if they're going to get a little sloppy around the edges, well, Splyce are still going to be Splyce at the end of the day. And a good punish. All off the back of EmilZy messing up in the mid lane.
So I've done this twice now. Last week, Ryan and I said, well, Splyce are going to lose this one. And there was a long game, and Splyce brought it back. And that was, they were down 15,000 gold. That was, a professional piece of analysis for me to say, I think this is kind of over here. The Titan push, I had accidentally called. All right, the Titan's going to go down. The damage wasn't there from PK. This is now the second time that I've called Splycer out of a game, and they're making their resurgence. The frenzy has popped on the Fire Giant. Cabom look at his own DW. Full commit here from Splyce. Pittsburgh Knights steal the Fire Giant. Venenu on the back end is getting in trouble from Deathwalker. Aror taken out by the carry. Deathwalker taunted, Scream made fun of. DW puts number 19 up, and Vote makes it 20. Pittsburgh Knights, they sniff around, and they flirt with losing the game. But now, 2 players left to play defense. Who knows what'll happen?
I respect the decision, though, from Splyce to try and commit there. In terms of confirmation, I think that Splyce probably should have had that one. Just, unfortunately, did not work out in their favor this time around. But Venenu and CycloneSpin, they're the only ones left to play defense. Venenu trying to split that Divine Ruin anti-heal, but not sure how well it's going to work out here.
Here comes Pittsburgh looking for the damage. 80% on the objective so far. Vote gets 1, Cyclone's down. The Titan dealing damage back. 25%, 10-5-0. Making sure I call it to the last moment. Pittsburgh Knights take the set in game number 4.
I think that if Splyce weren't already clinched for MSI, we don't see them go for that Fire Giant play. But because they were already in, I think that their best shot at a comeback in this game, despite the picks that had been taking place, those were largely due to small errors from Pittsburgh Knights' side of things, and Splyce just punishing because even with the sub, Splyce still have 4 really good and competent players that know what to do and how to effectively punish teams for those type of over-aggressions and overstays. But even with the staggered death timers, I think Splyce deeply understood, hey, our best bet at bringing down PK and making this go to a Game 5 is probably going to be if we take a stance on this FG.
I'll be honest, they were only, at that point in time, because of the various returns and stuff, they were only down, they being Splyce, they were only down about 4,000 gold.
The gold's irrelevant, though, I think.
Sure. I think realistically they can fight their way into it. That's a play that I will never fault them for. I like that play. I think they might have been able to play it a little bit more cautiously, but at the end of the day, those are the plays that win games, win sets, win championships, and so I'm never going to fault them for it. I like the aggression. I think it was a call that makes sense.
It was a bold call, and they went for a shot and just didn't work out for them this time around, but nothing to feel bad about. Hey, they still got 1 win at least with the coach.
Yeah, that is absolutely something to write home about. 3-1 in the direction of Pittsburgh. Let's break it down.
And the Knights come out on top as we would have expected going in. The speed bump of game number 1 still looms a bit large. A nice win for Splyce to at least get that one. But in the end, I think at this level, it really, you can tell when you don't have your full squad all there together.
Yeah, utilizing the global pressure from the Mercury, it was just a case where PK was more grouped up better than Splyce at the end of the day, getting the objective. Steal was Splyce that one time around, so that was a good way to keep themselves still relevant in the game. Yet again, I think the solo lane disparity or difference between these 2 players was a little evident this game. Yet again, more Totem of Coups going to PK, and it just translated throughout the game.
And really, they changed things up a little bit here, too. And this is towards the end of the game where Splyce tried to go for it and just confirm this objective, but couldn't quite get it done in the end. But early, remember, it started with actually, for the first time, pressure in duo lane. CycloneSpin ended up in some trouble at the beginning of the game and couldn't get away, and that's how they really got the ball rolling for the Knights. But, I mean, this one was never in much doubt until they stopped him at the Titan.
Yeah, that game was still close, I would say, so I'm a little surprised that Splyce even went for that objective and forced it as hard as they did, but with their Titan being a little bit exposed, left side Phoenix did go down not too long before that Fire Giant attempt. They felt like they needed to make that desperation play, and they did a good job defending that tier 2 middle tower as well when they were doing Aror CC on the Kumakarna, allowing poke from a distance safely from Venenu and CycloneSpin, and then the flank from Screammmmm, the chase down potential that they implemented on the Knight just wasn't enough though to bring it back in their favor.
It felt like this game, Deathwalker finally said, well, if I'm going to have a lead in solo no matter what, I better pick someone who can really, really use it. And that's what he did with this Achilles. I mean, 28,000 damage is absurd. A lot of times we talk about solo laners having some fake damage in there, but not with this case with Deathwalker. He was all over these team fights, landing the executes where he needs them to, punishing Vin or Cyclone, Scream, whoever's in front of him, and really making life hard for Splyce.
And outside of the offense from Deathwalker, I think the self-defense from Zyrhoes, he was unkillable on the solo. I think that he ended the game without any single deaths, as opposed to the Jormungandr in game 1 when he had 2 to start off the game. And that's the difference of style that he brings to the table, where he'll try to make an impact on all of his gods, obviously, but sometimes he's willing to put himself so far out there on the Jormungandr, or he'll play the soul, allowing other players to do the dirty work.
And I wonder if this maybe at any point kind of alleviates things for some of those other bottom teams like LG and Trifecta, because Splyce, a really good team, in games 2 and 4 kind of looked like them, right? Where it was like they were getting outclassed a bit. You can really just be one piece, one thing away from it at any given moment. I really think that that's just true when everyone else in the SPL is this talented.
That solo lane, man, it really matters, you know? Like a lot in season 3 and 4, it was just, you know, AFK farming, you know, and you'll make your presence felt. But no, even in season 6, still in SMITE meta, you need to have that impact out of the solo lane, not only to win your laning phase, but make sure that you keep the farm from your jungle available.
And you've heard people talk about all the time, it's not even just that, like, you know, maybe they're winning their lane matchup, but you don't know what their voice and comms is like for the team, right? And their ability to shot call. There's so many different pieces that you just don't know what taking one out might do to affect a team. We do get a chance, though, to hear a little bit more about the mentality from the Knights. It's EmilZy and Adapting standing by for the interview.
What's good, Pittsburgh Knights? Congratulations on the victory. Let's talk game number 1. Splyce took that one pretty interesting. Just break it down, guys.
Oof. I mean, I think we kind of just messed up. We slipped up and made some bad plays, and obviously, like, their comp was really good at punishing that. They had a comp that burns objectives really fast. So anytime you make any kind of misplay, it creates big opportunities for them to go for kind of somewhat a risky play, but also in their favor, right? So if it works out for them, then that's a huge win. And they did that. They managed to get the FG, and then I think we just kind of misplayed our fight. We didn't really get to kill the targets we were going for as fast as we wanted to. And because of that, they were able to punish our backline somewhat. And yeah, they just won the engagement. And then, like, we ended up, 4 of us died, and it's like, oh, well, oops, I guess that's game.
Looking forward to MSI, who are you guys anticipating to be some of your bigger competitors at that event?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, right? Like, Rival is like the big contender right now. I think Splyce and Renegades are up there as well. Dignitas can definitely do it as well, but I'm more so less frightened than Dig. Than I think Rival, Splyce, Renegades all teams are looking a bit stronger right now. But it wouldn't, like, Dig is probably going to show up as well. But yeah, I mean, probably Rival is like the main contender, but I think we're on the opposite sides of the bracket, so hopefully we'll make it, and hopefully we can get some revenge in the final. That would be sick.
A lot of hopefully there, but honestly, you guys, with one half of the season down, you know, have really nothing to hope for because you guys have looked fantastic. Coming into the season, we asked you guys a lot. Super team, how are you going to do? Have your expectations been met in the first half?
I'd say our expectations are getting met more and more. I think that, like, a lot of people had the expectation that we would go into the split and be like super dominant and just, you know, wreck hall everywhere, but like, I think that's not really the case, especially with super teams, because with super teams usually you'll have a lot of kind of star players that are used to having like certain playstyles within their teams. So when they like kind of mesh like we did, we had a lot of different playstyles and different ways to play the game and how we wanted to, like, you know, play early game, play team fights, you know, play around objectives. And I think we're really starting to kind of mesh now and sort all of that out, and we're just progressively getting better and better. So, you know, I think we're getting to where we want to be at least.
It certainly has been an experience watching you guys. Last question before we go, looking towards the future. MSI A lot of people are saying, listen, these guys, there's a lot of picks that we haven't seen just yet, a lot of tricks. Obviously, I'm not asking you to tell me the details, but is that true? Are we not seeing the game we'll see in a couple of weeks?
I mean, I doubt it. I think that we're seeing that teams are finally finding counters to what is meta right now. I think Splyce did that in game 1, and they played really well around that. But I think we're prepared. We have something in the back pocket. We almost showed it today, but we're like, actually, you know what? Let's just save it for MSI. So we are very, very ready.
Don't play Bastet mid. Fantastic job, guys. Good stuff. And congrats on the win. Back to you guys on the desk.
Glad to see these teams are already looking forward to the mid-season invitational. They're going to need every bit of prep for that they can get. But also glad to hear that they were sort of impressed with some of what Splyce were able to do, at least some of what Cabom brought to the team.
Definitely, right? Like, everyone should be looking at this game and be like, all right, Cabom can still play. It's
That's
not.
right.
He's not only just the Hunter player that we remember from him in Season 2 in COG, now helping Splyce get a win. Couldn't help them get the set win today, though.
But like we talked about, the mid-season invitational looms large. Let's take a look at those standings. Remember, it's going to be the top 6 teams from these standings that are going. That is locked in now. Rival, Dig, Knights, E-United, Splyce, and Renegades. Though Dig still have a chance to take that first place spot tomorrow. And that definitely still matters. That's the difference between playing the top team that qualifies out of the SML, SCL, or the second team that qualifies.
That's right. Dig and Tell's having the head-to-head record over Team Rival. Would win that one. And Renegades beating out Space Station earlier today, clinching their spot into MSI. A very interesting set today.
That's right. They can't move beyond that 6th place. That's what they'll be down there. But still, some of the teams can move around a little bit. So the mid-season invitational, that's the big tournament they're going to have in the middle of the year. But the one at the end of the year, even bigger than that, is High Res Expo, the one everyone wants to make it to. But don't worry, you don't have to grind out a year in competition or work here or anything like that. You can get to that event pretty easily. Just go to highresexpo.com, pick up your tickets, and come hang out.
Don't forget to mark the dates on your calendar, November 15th through the 17th, where I believe Finch is going to be giving out those crisp handshakes.
They'll be crisp indeed.
So crisp.
But you want to also make sure, Taco pointed this out, you have a chance to be on all those cool intro videos. There's a dude at the front. He's famous
that's
amongst us
right.
now,
Yeah.
who's been getting down every day,
I
showing
hope
his
he's there
love.
this year.
That's right. If maybe you could be there and you could be that one that everyone ends up knowing from seeing you having so much fun. But in the meantime, if you want to enjoy the game at home, make sure you pick up that Independence chest July 4th right around the corner. But it's not just America we're celebrating. There's a bunch of cool skins in there. Make sure you grab it.
It's got to be the Zeus skin, right? Like, which
That's
one's
a good
your
one.
favorite one?
Well, Raw America is in
Raw
there. That's
America?
OG.
That is OG.
Smite fun right there that you got to
But
have.
in Season 4 Worlds, everyone was chanting USA because Venenu brought out the Zeus American skin.
That's right. I've never experienced quite like that one in Season 4. I was like, I hope we don't hate the rival boys or anything like that. We definitely love them, but there's a lot of USA chants happening there. So if you want something else chanted, go to High Res Expo, pick up your tickets, and that way you can maybe lead the chants.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. You want to lead the chance this time? You got anything you want to do when we hire Expo?
When we get there,
Yeah.
depends who's in the finals. That'll determine what chant that I do.
That'll determine it. So make sure that you all are there. Hang out with the rest of us. But that's going to do it here for today. The SPL is not done. We still have one more day to go tomorrow. So make sure you tune back in with us then, and I'll see you there.
The Smite Pro League, brought to you by Titanforge, Hi-Res Studios, iNow, Respawn, SteelSeries, Alienware, and Skillshot.